Greetings, dear viewers. You're watching Monkey DFIC. We have prepared something special for you today. What if Thor crash-landed on Dawn Island and raised Luffy as the pirate god of thunder? Your likes and subscriptions keep this channel alive. If you enjoy our content, please show your support. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Chapter 1, Thunder strikes dawn. The sky cracked open like it was being torn apart by angry hands. Lightning stabbed down, not in quick flashes but in one continuous, blinding stream that connected heaven and earth for nearly 10 seconds. Villagers on Dawn Island ran for shelter as thunder shook the foundations of their homes. This wasn't a normal storm. The air felt charged, heavy with something beyond weather, like the world itself was holding its breath. Monkey D. Garp stood on the beach, squinting up at the bizarre phenomenon. His weathered face showed no fear, just intense curiosity. Behind him, his 7-year-old grandson Luffy peeked out, wide-eyed and clutching his grandfather's pant leg. "Gramps, what's happening?" Luffy asked, voice barely audible over the howling wind. "Stay behind me, boy," Garp answered, his usual booming voice uncharacteristically quiet. "Something's coming." The lightning intensified, concentrating into a spiraling vortex. The center darkened, forming what looked impossibly like a tunnel in the sky. And then, a figure hurtled through, trailing electricity and spinning uncontrollably toward the island. Impact. The ground shook with such force that trees snapped and buildings trembled. A crater now marked the beach where nothing had been moments before, smoke rising in thick plumes. "Luffy, stay here," Garp ordered, but the boy was already running forward, drawn by irresistible curiosity. Inside the crater lay a man, if you could call him just a man. Massive, muscled, with long blonde hair and a beard streaked with blood. His armor, dented and scorched, still somehow gleamed with an otherworldly sheen. Beside him lay a hammer that seemed too large for any normal person to lift. The stranger's eyes snapped open, electric blue and disoriented. He tried to rise, fell back, then growled something in a language neither Luffy nor Garp understood. "Who are you?" Garp demanded, pushing Luffy behind him protectively. The stranger focused on them, confusion clearing slightly. "I am Thor, son of Odin, god of thunder." His voice matched his appearance, powerful, deep, but currently strained with pain. What realm is this?" Before Garp could answer, warning shouts erupted from the village. Pirates, a crew they'd never seen before, had chosen this moment of chaos to raid. Their ship, having approached under cover of the supernatural storm, now anchored in the bay. "Damn vultures," Garp snarled. "They think the Navy's not watching this island." He turned to the stranger, Thor, who was struggling to his feet. "Stay here with the boy. I'll handle this." Thor looked offended. "I need no protection from, I'm not protecting you," Garp cut him off. "I'm saying watch my grandson." Without waiting for agreement, Garp sprinted toward where pirates were already flooding into the village. Luffy stared up at Thor, completely unafraid. "Are you really a god?" Thor looked down, seeming to truly notice the small boy for the first time. "Yes. Though it appears my powers are diminished in this realm." "Cool." Luffy grinned. "I'm gonna be king of the pirates someday." Despite everything, Thor found himself chuckling. Bold claim for one so small. Their conversation was cut short by the sounds of fighting. Even weakened, Thor's senses were sharper than a human's. He heard gunshots, clashing swords, and Garp's thunderous punches connecting with pirate flesh. "Your grandfather fights well," Thor remarked, impressed despite himself as he watched Garp take down 3 pirates at once with a single sweeping punch. Luffy beamed with pride. "Gramps is a marine hero. He's super strong." The battle seemed to be going well. Garp was a one-man army, and the villagers, used to defending themselves, fought back capably. But then came the sound that would change everything, a whistling through the air followed by a catastrophic explosion. The pirate ship had cannon mounted, and their captain, seeing his crew faltering, had given the order to fire on the village indiscriminately. Thor watched in horror as buildings exploded and villagers scattered in panic. Without thinking, he tried to summon lightning, to call on the storm, but felt only a faint response, nothing like the power he commanded in Asgard. Mjolnir, he murmured, looking at his hammer. We may be weakened, but we are still needed. With effort, he hefted the weapon, which felt unnaturally heavy in his hand. Luffy was already running toward the village, toward his grandfather who was now fighting through pirates to reach the ship and stop the bombardment. Boy! Stay back! Thor called, but Luffy ignored him. Garp had nearly reached the shore when it happened. The pirate captain, a thin man with dead eyes, aimed a pistol directly at Luffy, who'd stopped in his tracks, finally realizing his danger. Luffy! Garp roared, changing direction and throwing himself between his grandson and the bullet. The shot rang out. Garp staggered but continued forward, taking another step before a second and third bullet hit him. Still, the marine hero fought on, reaching the captain and delivering a punch that sent the man flying into the mast of his own ship. More pirates surrounded Garp. Wounded as he was, he fought like a demon, but Thor could see he was failing. Blood soaked his shirt, and his movements, while still devastatingly powerful, were slowing. No more, Thor growled, finally feeling a spark of his old power returning. With a grunt of effort, he swung Mjolnir and launched himself toward the battle. What followed would become legend on Dawn Island. The weakened god and the dying marine hero fought back-to-back, Thor's hammer crushing pirate weapons and bones alike while Garp's fists sent men flying in all directions. But Garp was mortal, and his wounds were fatal. As the last pirate fell, so did he, collapsing onto the beach with Luffy running to his side, tears streaming down the boy's face. Gramps! Gramps, get up! Thor knelt beside them, recognizing the look of a warrior who had fought his last battle. Garp's eyes were clear despite the pain, fixed on his grandson. Luffy, Garp managed, his voice fading. Live free. Find your own justice. His gaze shifted to Thor. You. God or not. You protect him. Promise me. Thor felt the weight of the dying man's words, a warrior's last request could not be denied. I swear it on my father's name. The boy will be under my protection. Garp nodded once, seeming satisfied. He turned back to Luffy, lifted a shaking hand to ruffle the boy's hair one last time, then closed his eyes forever. Luffy's wail of grief echoed across the beach, mingling with the still rumbling thunder overhead. Thor stood, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, uncertain what comfort he could offer in this strange realm. The villagers gathered around them, faces shocked at the loss of their protector. An older woman stepped forward, tears in her eyes. What happens now? She asked, looking from the fallen marine to the strange, godly visitor. Without Garp-san. Thor straightened, decision made. He had sworn an oath. The boy comes with me. We will stay here, on this island. I will protect it as. He paused, glancing down at Luffy who was still clutching his grandfather's lifeless hand, as his grandfather did. The following days passed in a blur of grief and adjustment. The villagers, though wary of Thor, accepted his presence after he helped rebuild what the pirates had destroyed. His strength, even diminished, was remarkable, and his knowledge of construction from centuries of rebuilding Asgard after battles proved valuable. Luffy stayed mostly silent, following Thor around like a shadow. The god wasn't sure what to do with a grieving human child, but he kept his oath, ensuring the boy ate, slept, and stayed safe. They took up residence in Garp's house on the outskirts of Fusha village, a modest place that felt cavernous without the marine's larger-than-life presence. On the third night, the silence finally broke. Were you really thrown out of the sky? Luffy asked, picking at his dinner. Thor looked up, surprised to hear the boy speak voluntarily. Yes. I was battling my brother Loki. His magic opened a portal between realms, and I fell through. Can you go back? Thor set down his fork. I don't know. My powers are limited here. Mjolnir, my hammer, doesn't respond as it should. Something about this realm dampens Asgardian magic. Luffy nodded, absorbing this. Then, unexpectedly, will you teach me to fight? Fight? Yeah. Gramps was teaching me. Said I needed to be strong. But now. Luffy's voice caught, but he pushed through. Now I gotta be even stronger. For him. And to become Pirate King. Thor studied the small boy. There was something in those determined eyes that reminded him of warriors he'd known, a spark that couldn't be extinguished. You still wish to be this. Pirate King, even after pirates took your grandfather? Those were bad pirates, Luffy said simply. I'm gonna be a good one. The best one. The freest person in all the seas. Despite himself, Thor smiled. Freedom. A noble pursuit. He considered for a moment. Very well. I will teach you to fight. Not as your grandfather would have, I don't know his methods. But I can teach you as Asgardian warriors are taught. Luffy's face lit up for the first time since Garp's death. Really? You'll teach me god fighting? It won't be easy, Thor warned. Asgardian training is brutal, even for children. I don't care. I'll do it. Luffy jumped up, practically vibrating with renewed determination. When do we start? Tomorrow, Thor said. But first, you must finish your meal. Warriors need strength. Luffy immediately began shoveling food into his mouth with newfound enthusiasm. Thor watched, bemused. Perhaps raising a human child wouldn't be so different from training young warriors after all. Months passed. Dawn Island adjusted to its strange new protector and the increasingly unusual training sessions happening in the forests and on the beaches. Thor proved to be a demanding but fair teacher. He started Luffy with basics, stance, balance, endurance, before moving to actual combat techniques. What the god lacked in familiarity with human limitations, he made up for with thousands of years of battle experience. Again. Thor commanded as Luffy picked himself up from the dirt for what felt like the 100th time that day. Your opponent won't wait for you to be ready. The 8-year-old, covered in bruises but grinning fiercely, launched himself at Thor once more. The god easily deflected him, but nodded approvingly at the boy's form. Better. Your strikes are becoming more controlled. When do I get to use the hammer? Luffy asked, eyeing Mjolnir where it rested nearby. Thor laughed. Perhaps in a few centuries. Their training routines became a familiar sight to villagers, who watched with a mixture of concern and amazement as the small boy developed surprising strength and skill under the god's tutelage. More surprising was the change in Thor himself, the initially aloof deity becoming increasingly invested in his young charge's progress. They weren't just training partners or guardian and ward. Somewhere along the line, they had become family. It wasn't always smooth sailing. Thor knew nothing about raising children, and his Asgardian expectations sometimes clashed with Luffy's very human limitations and needs. But they figured it out together, with occasional guidance from villagers like Makino, who had known Luffy since infancy. He needs play as well as training, she gently advised Thor after watching a particularly grueling session. He's still a child. Thor frowned. In Asgard, this isn't Asgard, Makino interrupted, showing surprising boldness in the face of divinity. And he's not an Asgardian child. Thor considered this, then nodded. You speak wisely. Perhaps I have been overzealous. The next day, training ended early, replaced by swimming and exploration of the island's caves and forests. Luffy's delighted laughter as Thor used a controlled lightning strike to catch fish was reward enough for the adjustment. A year passed, then another. Thor's powers gradually strengthened, though they remained shadows of what he'd commanded in Asgard. He learned about this strange world from books and travelers, piecing together an understanding of the Grand Line, the four blues, marines, and pirates. Luffy soaked up Thor's tales of Asgard, Midgard, and the Nine Realms with the same enthusiasm he showed for stories about the Pirate King Gold Roger. In his young mind, these fantastic worlds blended together into one grand adventure waiting to happen. Their peaceful existence changed the day red-haired Shanks and his crew arrived in Fusha village. Thor had gone to the mountains to practice summoning storms, something that required concentration away from the village. Luffy, now 10, had been left in Makino's care at her bar. When Thor returned that evening, he found the village buzzing with excitement about the pirate crew drinking at Makino's. He hurried there, hammer ready, only to find Luffy sitting at the bar beside a red-haired man, both laughing uproariously. "Thor!" Luffy called out, waving enthusiastically. "This is Shanks. He's a real pirate captain." The red-haired man turned, and Thor immediately sensed this was no ordinary human. Power radiated from him, not divine, but formidable nonetheless. "So you're the famous thunder god everyone's talking about," Shanks said with an easy smile. "I was starting to think you were just a story the villagers made up." "I assure you, I am quite real," Thor replied, cautiously approaching. He nodded to Luffy. "You've met my ward." "Great kid," Shanks said. "Bit fixated on joining my crew, though." "I'm gonna be a pirate," Luffy declared for perhaps the 1,000th time since Thor had known him. "The king of pirates." Shanks laughed. "You can't even swim, Anchor." "I'll learn." Thor watched their interaction with interest. This Shanks treated Luffy with a mixture of teasing and genuine affection that seemed to delight the boy. Against his initial judgment, Thor found himself warming to the pirate captain. Over the next few weeks, as the red-haired pirates remained in Fusha village, Thor observed them closely. They were nothing like the pirates who'd killed Garp. These men were rowdy but honorable, never causing trouble for the villagers and paying generously for their food and drink. Shanks, for his part, was equally curious about Thor. One evening, as Luffy played with other crew members, the captain approached Thor with 2 mugs of ale. "Not many gods hanging around the East Blue," Shanks remarked, offering a mug. "Especially not raising human kids." Thor accepted the drink. "I made a promise to his grandfather." "Garp the Fist," Shanks nodded. "Heard what happened. He was a good man, even if we were on opposite sides of the law." He took a sip, then asked, "You planning to make the kid into a god too?" "I cannot make him Asgardian," Thor said. "But I can teach him to be strong, to fight with honor." "And what about his dream to be a pirate?" "Marines wouldn't have approved of that." Thor looked over to where Luffy was trying to arm wrestle one of Shanks' crew, his face scrunched in determination despite being hopelessly outmatched. "His grandfather's last words were for him to live free and find his own justice," Thor said. "If that path is piracy, then so be it. Though I admit, I don't fully understand what being a pirate means in this world." Shanks grinned. "It can mean a lot of things. For some, it's about greed or power. For others." He gazed out toward the sea, his expression turning wistful. "It's about freedom. The most freedom anyone can have." "Freedom," Thor repeated. "That, I understand." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion. A group of unfamiliar men had entered the bar, led by a scruffy mountain bandit named Higuma. What started as demands for sake quickly escalated when Shanks offered the last bottle to the bandit, only for some of it to spill on Higuma when Luffy accidentally bumped his arm. "You think this is funny?" Higuma snarled at Shanks, breaking the bottle and swiping its contents across the bar. Thor moved to intervene. No one threatened a child under his protection, but Shanks gave him a subtle hand signal to wait. The red-haired captain remained calm as Higuma left, even laughing off the incident. "Why didn't you fight them?" Luffy demanded, clearly disappointed in his pirate hero. "You looked like a coward." "Luffy!" Thor reprimanded sharply. But Shanks just laughed. "It's just a bottle of sake. Nothing worth fighting over." "Luffy, unsatisfied with this answer, stomped off to sit at the far end of the bar. In his anger, he spotted a small chest the pirates had brought in earlier. Opening it, he found an unusual fruit inside, purple, swirling patterns covering its surface. Thor, distracted by helping Shanks clean up the mess, didn't notice until Luffy had already taken a large bite. "This tastes awful," the boy complained loudly. The entire bar went silent. Shanks' crew stared in horror. "Luffy, what did you just eat?" Shanks asked, voice unnaturally serious. "That weird fruit in the box," Luffy said, still making disgusted faces. "It tastes like, spit it out. Right now." Shanks grabbed Luffy, turning him upside down and shaking him frantically. "What's happening?" Thor demanded, alarmed by the sudden panic. "He ate a devil fruit." "The gum-gum fruit," one of the crew explained. "It's a treasure we took from an enemy ship." "Devil fruit?" Thor echoed, unfamiliar with the term. Shanks set Luffy down, running a hand through his red hair in distress. "He's a rubber man now. And he'll never be able to swim again. Not ever." As if to demonstrate, Shanks pinched Luffy's cheek and pulled, the flesh stretched impossibly, like rubber, before snapping back into place when released. Thor stared in astonishment. Magic fruit that grants powers but takes away the ability to swim? This realm becomes stranger by the day. "It's not magic, it's," one of the crew began, but Shanks cut him off. "Close enough," the captain said, then turned to Thor with a serious expression. "This complicates things. Devil fruit users are rare, especially in East Blue. People will come looking for him once word gets out." Thor nodded gravely. "Then we must make him strong enough to face them." The very next day, they discovered exactly what it meant for Luffy to be made of rubber. Thor had resumed their training, curious to see how the boys' new abilities would affect their routine. "Try to punch as you normally would," Thor instructed. Luffy threw a punch, but his arm stretched wildly, causing him to spin and fall. "This is weird," he complained, looking at his hands with frustration. "I can't control it." "All new powers require mastery," Thor said patiently. "When I first called lightning, I nearly electrocuted myself." They spent hours experimenting with Luffy's rubber abilities, stretching, bouncing, flexibility. By sunset, the boy could at least throw a basic punch without his arm flailing uncontrollably, though precise movements remained challenging. As they walked back toward the village, Thor had an idea. He stopped, holding out his hand. "Luffy, give me your arm." The boy stretched out his arm, now able to extend it several feet. Thor took it, then summoned a small spark of lightning to his fingertips. "This may sting," he warned, then sent the electricity through Luffy's rubber limb. To both their surprise, instead of bouncing off as lightning normally would against rubber, the electricity seemed to flow through Luffy's body, causing him to glow briefly. The boy's eyes widened, not in pain but excitement. "Whoa! That felt awesome. Do it again." Thor complied, increasing the charge slightly. Luffy's hair stood on end, and he giggled wildly as electricity danced across his skin before dissipating. "Fascinating," Thor murmured. "Your rubber nature doesn't repel lightning as it should. Instead, it seems to conduct it safely through you." "What does that mean?" Luffy asked, examining his still slightly sparking fingers. Thor grinned, a plan forming. "It means, young Luffy, that you and I have much more interesting training ahead than I'd anticipated." The next few days were spent exploring this unexpected compatibility between Thor's lightning and Luffy's rubber body. They discovered that Luffy could not only withstand Thor's electrical attacks but could temporarily store the energy, releasing it in powerful, if uncontrolled, bursts. Their experimentation was cut short, however, when trouble returned to Fusha village in the form of Higuma and his bandits. This time, Thor and the red-haired pirates were away, checking on reports of sea monsters in the bay. Luffy, alone at Makino's bar, couldn't stay quiet when the bandits began badmouthing Shanks. Take that back, he shouted. Shanks is the greatest pirate ever. What followed was predictable, the small boy against a group of armed bandits. Despite his new rubber abilities and Thor's training, Luffy was outmatched. Higuma dragged him to the town square, using him as an example of what happened to those who defied the mountain bandits. When Thor and Shanks returned to find Luffy being publicly beaten, the temperature of the entire village seemed to drop. Two very different types of fury converged on the town square, Thor's divine rage manifesting as storm clouds gathering with unnatural speed, and Shanks' more controlled but equally dangerous anger. Let the boy go, Thor commanded, Mjolnir crackling with energy in his grip. Higuma laughed. Or what, freak? I've heard about you, some crazy foreigner pretending to be a god. Well, I don't believe in gods. You need not believe in the tide to be drowned by it, Thor replied, raising his hammer. Before he could strike, however, Shanks stepped forward. Give me the kid, and we'll forgive this foolishness. The great Captain Shanks, begging? Higuma mocked. I think I'll keep the brat. Maybe sell him to a slave ship. What happened next occurred so quickly that even Thor had trouble following it. One moment Higuma was standing there, holding Luffy by the collar, the next, the bandits' men were collapsing unconscious around him, and Shanks was beside him, a pistol aimed casually at his temple. I don't like people threatening my friends, Shanks said, his usual easygoing tone replaced by something cold and deadly. Higuma, face pale with sudden terror, released Luffy. The boy ran to Thor, who placed a protective hand on his shoulder. Get out of this village, Shanks ordered. If I see your face again, it'll be the last time anyone does. The bandit fled, stumbling over his unconscious comrades in his haste to escape. Luffy, safe but shaken, looked between Thor and Shanks with wide eyes. How did you do that? They just fell down. Conqueror's Haki, Thor said with newfound respect for the pirate captain. A rare ability in Midgard. On Asgard, we call it the voice of kings. Shanks raised an eyebrow, impressed by Thor's knowledge. You recognize it? I've seen similar powers across the realms, Thor confirmed. Though it manifests differently here. Later, as Makino treated Luffy's wounds, Thor and Shanks spoke privately on the docks. The boy has potential, Shanks said. Not just the devil fruit, there's something special about him. Thor nodded. I've sensed it too. A spirit that reminds me of the greatest warriors I've known. We'll be leaving soon, Shanks said. The Grand Line calls. But before I go. He glanced back toward the bar where Luffy was undoubtedly recounting his adventure to anyone who would listen. I think I have something for him. The day the red-haired pirates departed dawned bright and clear. The entire village gathered to see them off, Luffy and Thor at the forefront. You're really not taking me with you? Luffy asked Shanks for the final time, lower lip trembling slightly despite his attempts to look tough. Shanks grinned. Not this time, Anchor. You're still too young. I'm stronger than before. Thor's teaching me to channel lightning and everything. Is that so? Shanks looked to Thor, who nodded confirmation. The boy has a natural affinity for the storm, Thor said proudly. With his rubber body conducting rather than repelling electricity, he's developing abilities I've never seen in a mortal. All the more reason to wait until you're ready, Shanks told Luffy. But I want you to have something to remember our promise. The pirate captain removed the straw hat he always wore and placed it on Luffy's head. It was far too large, slipping down over the boy's eyes. This hat means a lot to me, Shanks said. It's my treasure. Keep it safe until you become a great pirate, then return it to me. Luffy pushed the hat up, tears streaming down his face. I promise. I'll become the greatest pirate ever. I'll find the One Piece and be the Pirate King. Thor watched the exchange with a slight smile. He'd come to respect Shanks during the pirate's day, a rare feat for a mortal to earn an Asgardian's esteem. As Shanks boarded his ship, he called back to Thor, take care of our boy. He's going to change this world someday. Thor raised Mjolnir in salute. You have my word, Captain Shanks. After the red force disappeared over the horizon, Thor noticed Luffy still standing at the dock, clutching the straw hat tightly. Come, Luffy, Thor said gently. We have training to do if you're to become Pirate King someday. Luffy looked up, eyes still wet but burning with determination. Thor. Can you do something to the hat? What do you mean? Like, make it special. With your god powers. So I never lose it. Thor considered this request. I could imbue it with a fraction of my essence, yes. It would become more durable, perhaps even channel some of my power. But are you certain? It would change the hat. Luffy nodded firmly. Shanks gave it to me to keep safe. This will help me do that. And he grinned, imagination running wild, it'll be super cool to have a magic pirate hat. That night, under a full moon, Thor performed a ritual he hadn't attempted since arriving in this realm. Using Mjolnir as a focus, he channeled divine energy into the straw hat, weaving spells of protection and power into its very fibers. The hat glowed briefly with bluish light, then settled back to its normal appearance, though now, if one looked closely, tiny lightning-like patterns could be seen running through the straw, and the red band seemed to shimmer with otherworldly energy. It is done, Thor announced, returning the hat to Luffy. While you wear this, a portion of my power goes with you. It will protect you from some harm and allow you to better channel the lightning we've been practicing. Luffy placed the hat on his head reverently, then broke into a wide grin as he felt the subtle energy humming through it. This is the best present ever. Now I'm really gonna be the pirate god of thunder. Thor laughed, tousling the boy's hair beneath the hat. Indeed you are, little one. Indeed you are. Years passed. Luffy grew from a scrappy child into a lanky teenager, his rubber abilities and Thor-taught combat skills developing impressively. By 14, he could stretch and snap back with precision, turning his rubber nature from a hindrance into an advantage. By 16, he could channel Thor's lightning through his body and direct it through punches and kicks. The straw hat became his trademark, both a reminder of his promise to Shanks and a focus for the divine energy Thor had placed within it. When Luffy wore it and called upon its power, the hat's brim would glow with a subtle blue light, and electricity would dance across its surface. Their training evolved from basic combat to more elaborate techniques. Thor taught Luffy to listen to storms, to feel the natural electricity in the air and draw it to himself. Though he couldn't generate lightning independently as Thor could, Luffy learned to pull existing electrical energy toward him, storing it temporarily in his rubber body before releasing it in devastating attacks. They called his signature move, Gum Gum Thunder Pistol, a stretched punch that carried a powerful electrical charge. The villagers grew used to the sight of lightning striking on clear days as Luffy practiced. Thor found himself impressed by how Luffy combined his rubber nature with Thor's teachings, creating a fighting style unlike anything in the Nine Realms. The boy might not be Asgardian by blood, but he had the heart and creativity of the finest warriors Thor had known. As Luffy's 17th birthday approached, the day he decided he would set sail to become Pirate King, Thor felt both pride and a strange melancholy. The boy he'd raised was becoming a man, ready to forge his own path. It was the way of things, but after a decade as Luffy's guardian, Thor found the prospect of saying goodbye more difficult than he'd anticipated. The night before Luffy's departure, they sat on a cliff overlooking the sea, a spot they'd frequented throughout their years together. You've packed provisions? Thor asked, though he'd already checked Luffy's small boat 3 times. Yep. Meat and water and more meat. Luffy confirmed cheerfully. And you remember the navigation lessons Thor, Luffy interrupted with a laugh, I'll be fine. You've been teaching me forever. Thor sighed, running a hand through his beard, now streaked with a few strands of gray, a sign of how long he'd been in this realm, away from Asgard's preserving influence. I know. You're ready. He placed a hand on Luffy's shoulder. Your grandfather would be proud of the man you've become. Luffy's expression softened at the mention of Garp. You think so? Even though I'm becoming a pirate instead of a marine. He wanted you to find your own justice, to live free, Thor reminded him. And you've chosen a path of adventure and freedom, not cruelty or theft. Yes, Luffy, he would be proud. As am I. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching stars reflect off the calm sea. Will you ever go back? Luffy finally asked. To Asgard? It was a question they'd discussed over the years. Thor's powers had gradually strengthened, but never fully returned to their Asgardian levels. He'd come to suspect that something about this world, perhaps the same forces that created devil fruits, interfered with the cosmic energy he normally commanded. Perhaps someday, Thor answered truthfully. If I find a way. But this has become my home too, Luffy. These people, you, are my family now. Luffy grinned, adjusting his straw hat. Then you'll have two homes. And when I'm Pirate King, I can take you anywhere you want to go in this world. Thor laughed, the sound rumbling like distant thunder. I look forward to it. The next morning, the entire village gathered to see Luffy off. His small boat was ready, provisions stored, his enhanced straw hat firmly on his head. Remember, Thor said, clasping Luffy's forearm in the Asgardian warrior's farewell, the power of the storm flows through you now, but it is your heart that guides it. Be worthy of both your heritages, the mortal strength of your grandfather and the divine thunder you carry. Luffy nodded solemnly, then broke into his characteristic wide grin. I'm gonna miss you, Thor. But I'll make you proud. I'll be the greatest pirate god of thunder ever. You already make me proud, Luffy, Thor said softly. As the boat drifted away from the dock, Luffy stood tall at its bow, straw hat gleaming in the morning sun. He raised his fist to the sky in a final farewell. Thor lifted Mjolnir in response, calling down a single lightning bolt that split the cloudless sky, a divine salute to the boy who had become his son in all but blood. Goodbye everyone. Luffy shouted back to shore. I'm gonna be king of the pirates. The villagers cheered and waved, many wiping away tears. Thor watched until the small boat disappeared over the horizon, feeling a complicated mixture of pride, worry, and anticipation. Whatever awaited Luffy on the seas, Thor was certain of one thing: the world was not ready for the pirate god of thunder. Barely a day into his journey, Luffy encountered his first challenge, a massive whirlpool that threatened to swallow his small boat. Using quick thinking and his rubber abilities, he escaped by stuffing himself into a barrel, which eventually washed up on a cruise ship being raided by the Alvida pirates. Hiding in his barrel, Luffy overheard a conversation between a nervous-looking boy named Kobe and several pirate crewmen. When the pirates attempted to open the barrel, Luffy burst out, sending them flying with an inadvertent display of strength. Wow, that was a great nap, he exclaimed, oblivious to the chaos he'd caused. Noticing Kobe cowering nearby, he asked, "Who are you?" "See Kobe," the pink-haired boy stammered. "Are you one of the pirates?" "Nope. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man who's gonna be king of the pirates." "Pirate King? That's impossible. You'd have to find the One Piece and, yep. That's the plan." Luffy adjusted his straw hat, causing it to briefly shimmer with blue energy. "Hey, you know where I can find some food? I'm starving." Kobe, bewildered but sensing Luffy wasn't a threat to him personally, led the way to the ship's storage room. As Luffy devoured apples by the crate, Kobe explained his situation: kidnapped by Alvida 2 years ago and forced to work as her cabin boy. "Why don't you just leave?" Luffy asked through a mouthful of fruit. "Are you crazy? Alvida would kill me. She's the most terrible." The ceiling exploded inward as a massive iron club smashed through, followed by the enormous form of Alvida herself. "Who are you calling terrible, Kobe?" she demanded, glaring at Luffy. "Is this who you're planning to have capture me? He doesn't look like the famous bounty hunter Roronoa Zoro." "Zoro?" Luffy perked up. "Who's that?" Before anyone could answer, more pirates poured into the room, surrounding Luffy and Kobe. Alvida pointed her club at Luffy. "So, who are you?" Luffy straightened, his casual demeanor shifting to something more confident. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the pirate god of thunder." The pirates burst into laughter, but it died quickly as storm clouds suddenly gathered outside the portholes, despite the previously clear sky. "God of thunder?" Alvida sneered. "You don't look like much. Wanna see?" Luffy grinned, adjusting his straw hat. The red band began to glow faintly, and the air crackled with static electricity. Before Alvida could respond, Luffy's arm stretched back impossibly far. Gum. Lightning raced along his extended limb, concentrated from the gathering storm outside. Thunder pistol. His electrified fist shot forward with devastating speed, slamming into Alvida and sending her crashing through several walls and off the ship entirely with a massive splash. The remaining pirates stood frozen in shock, staring at the path of destruction and the teenage boy whose arm was just returning to normal length, electricity still dancing across his skin. "Anyone else?" Luffy asked cheerfully. They fled, jumping overboard in panic. Kobe stared at Luffy with his jaw hanging open. What are you?" "Told you. I'm the pirate god of thunder." Luffy laughed. "My foster dad's the real thunder god, but he shared his power with me. Plus, I ate the gum fruit, so I'm made of rubber." "A devil fruit user with divine power?" Kobe adjusted his glasses, trying to process this information. "That's incredible. So, where's this Zoro guy?" "Sounds interesting. He's being held prisoner at the marine base in Shell's Town," Kobe explained, still dazed. "But you don't want to meet him. He's a demon in human form. He hunts pirates for bounties and, perfect. I need strong people for my crew." Luffy decided on the spot. "Let's go find him." "Your crew? You mean you don't have anyone yet?" "Nope. Just me so far." Luffy grinned. "But not for long. Zoro will be my first crewmate." And so began the journey of Monkey D. Luffy, the pirate god of thunder. With his straw hat channeling divine energy, his rubber body amplifying his unique abilities, and his unshakable determination to become king of the pirates, he set sail into a world unprepared for the storm he would bring. Behind on Dawn Island, Thor watched the horizon with a knowing smile as reports of a rubber boy with lightning powers began to filter back. The legend was only beginning. Chapter 2, Gathering Storms, That's the Place. Luffy asked, shading his eyes against the sun as their small boat approached the marine base at Shell's Town. The building loomed over the rest of the modest port town, a stark white tower with blue-tiled roofs. "Why yeah," Kobe confirmed nervously, adjusting his glasses. "That's where they're holding Roronoa Zoro. But Luffy, I still think this is a terrible idea. He's called the Pirate Hunter for a reason." Luffy just grinned, adjusting his straw hat. "Sounds perfect for my crew. A strong guy like that must be interesting." They docked and made their way through town, quickly noticing something odd. Whenever they mentioned Zoro or the Marine Captain Morgan, townspeople flinched and looked around fearfully. "Something weird's going on here," Luffy muttered, his usual carefree expression turning serious for a moment. At the marine base, they peeked over the wall into the exercise yard. There, tied to a wooden cross under the blazing sun, was a man in a white shirt, green haramaki, and dark bandana. Despite his obvious exhaustion and the ropes binding him, he radiated a dangerous energy that made even Luffy pause. "That's him," Kobe whispered. "Roronoa Zoro, the pirate hunter." Zoro looked up, somehow sensing their presence. "Hey, you two. You're bothering me. Get lost." Instead of retreating, Luffy's face split into an enormous grin. He vaulted over the wall and walked directly toward the bound swordsman. "Are you really that strong?" Luffy asked, stopping a few feet away. Everyone's scared just hearing your name. Zoro glared. Mind your own business, kid. I'm looking for people to join my pirate crew, Luffy continued, undeterred. Pirate crew? Zoro snorted. So you're just another scum pirate, huh? There's nothing just about me, Luffy said, the air around him suddenly crackling with static. I'm going to be king of the pirates. Before Zoro could respond, a ladder appeared against the wall, and a small girl climbed over. She shushed Luffy and ran toward Zoro, unwrapping a small package of rice balls. I made these for you, she said. You haven't eaten in days, right? Beat it, kid, Zoro growled, though his tone lacked conviction. You'll get in trouble. Too late for that, a nasally voice called out as the gate opened. A skinny blonde man in an expensive suit strutted in, flanked by Marines. Well, what do we have here? Some tasty rice balls. The newcomer, Helmeppo, son of Captain Morgan, snatched one of the rice balls and took a bite, immediately spitting it out. Disgusting. There's sugar on these. Rice balls need salt, you stupid girl. He stomped the remaining rice balls into the dirt despite the girl's tears, then ordered a Marine to throw her over the wall. Luffy stretched his arms to catch her before she hit the ground, causing Helmeppo to stare in shock. What the hell are you? Helmeppo demanded. Luffy set the girl down gently, then turned to face the captain's son. The sky above them, previously clear, began to darken. Someone you shouldn't make angry. Thunder rumbled in the distance as clouds gathered with unnatural speed. Helmeppo took a step back, then tried to hide his fear with bravado. Do you know who my father is? He's Captain Morgan. The most powerful marine in these waters. Don't care, Luffy replied, walking back toward Zoro as Helmeppo retreated, shouting threats. Once they were alone again, Luffy stooped to pick up one of the muddied rice balls. She worked hard on these. Leave them, Zoro said gruffly. They're ruined anyway. Nothing's ruined until you give up on it. Luffy held out the rice ball. She made these for you because you saved her from a wolf a few weeks ago. That's why you're here, right? Not because you're some demon. Zoro's eyes widened slightly. How did you? The girl told us, Luffy explained. You agreed to survive a month tied up here to save her and her mother from execution. That's pretty cool. After a moment's hesitation, Zoro opened his mouth, allowing Luffy to feed him the salvaged rice ball. Despite the dirt, the swordsman chewed and swallowed gratefully. Tell her, it was delicious, he said quietly. Luffy nodded, then met Zoro's eyes directly. I'm going to free you, and then you're joining my crew. Don't decide that on your own. Zoro snapped. And I can't leave anyway. I've got 9 more days to. Helmeppo never planned to keep his promise, Luffy interrupted. He's telling everyone he's going to execute you tomorrow. Zoro's face darkened with rage. That bastard. So, here's the deal, Luffy said, crossing his arms. I'll get your swords back, beat up the Marines who lied to you, and then you'll join my crew. Sound good? You don't even know where my swords are, Zoro pointed out. Luffy pointed to the Marine base. Probably in there somewhere. I'll find them. Wait. Zoro called as Luffy turned to leave. What's your name? Monkey D. Luffy, he replied with a grin. The man who's going to be king of the pirates. Without waiting for a response, Luffy stretched his arms to grab the top of the Marine base and catapulted himself upward, disappearing from Zoro's astonished view. Inside the Marine base, Captain Morgan was addressing his men on the roof, where a massive statue of himself was being erected. I am great, am I not? He demanded, his axe hand gleaming in the sun. Why yes, Captain Morgan, the Marines responded in unison, fear evident in their voices. Then why are tax revenues down this month? The people must not appreciate my greatness enough. The meeting was interrupted when Luffy rocketed up from below, crashing into the statue and sending it toppling to the ground in pieces. Marines and Captain Morgan alike stared in shocked horror. "Oops. My bad," Luffy said, dusting himself off casually. "Hey, anyone know where I can find Zoro's swords?" Captain Morgan's face contorted with rage. "You. Do you have any idea what you've done? That statue represents my greatness. It took months to build." "Yeah, it wasn't very good anyway," Luffy shrugged. "Too ugly. Anyway, about those swords. Kill him," Morgan roared. "Shoot him now." The Marines raised their rifles and fired. Luffy didn't dodge, instead, he spread his arms wide, letting the bullets hit him. His rubber body stretched back, then snapped forward, sending the bullets flying in all directions. "That won't work on me," Luffy grinned. "I'm made of rubber." While the Marines stood frozen in shock, Luffy spotted Helmeppo trying to sneak away. "Hey! You!" He stretched his arm to grab the captain's son by the collar. "Where are Zoro's swords?" "I in my room." Helmeppo squeaked. "I'll show you. Just don't hurt me." Dragging the whimpering Helmeppo along, Luffy left the stunned Marines and Captain Morgan behind. Outside, Kobe had worked up the courage to approach Zoro and was trying to untie him. "What are you doing, kid?" Zoro demanded. "You'll get yourself killed." "Luffy's right," Kobe said, fingers fumbling with the tight ropes. "These Marines aren't following justice. Captain Morgan is ruling this town through fear. The real criminals are inside that base." Before Zoro could respond, gunshots rang out. Marines lined up at Morgan's command, rifles aimed at them. "Those who associate with criminals are criminals themselves," Morgan declared, stepping forward with his axe hand raised. "Execute them both." As the Marines prepared to fire, the sky suddenly darkened further. The air grew heavy with electricity, making everyone's hair stand on end. A low rumble of thunder grew steadily louder. "What's happening to the weather?" one Marine asked nervously. The answer came in the form of Luffy, leaping from a window of the base. 3 swords were strapped to his back, and his straw hat glowed with an eerie blue light. As he sailed through the air, he raised his hand toward the sky. "Come to me," he shouted. Lightning answered, striking down from the clouds directly into Luffy's upraised hand. Electricity coursed through his rubber body, causing him to glow with blue-white power. The Marines stared in terror as Luffy landed between them and their intended targets, crackling with divine energy. "Sorry I took so long," Luffy said to Zoro, his voice echoing strangely with power. "Had to find all 3 swords. Wasn't sure which was yours." "All of them," Zoro said, eyes wide at the display. What are you?" "Told you already," Luffy grinned, the electricity dancing across his skin reflecting in his eyes. "I'm the pirate god of thunder." Captain Morgan stepped forward, undaunted. "I don't care if you're a god or a demon. In this town, my word is law. Marines, fire." The terrified Marines raised their rifles again, but Luffy was faster. He stretched his electrified arm back. Gum Gum Thunder Pistol. His fist shot forward, trailing lightning, and plowed through the line of Marines, scattering them like bowling pins before connecting squarely with Morgan's chest. The captain flew backward, his axe hand shattering on impact, and crashed through the wall of his own base. In the stunned silence that followed, Luffy turned back to Zoro. "So, you in?" Zoro stared at the destruction, then at the glowing teenager before him. A slow, predatory grin spread across his face. "Untie me, pirate god. You've got yourself a first mate." With Captain Morgan defeated and Helmeppo cowering, the Marines surprisingly threw down their weapons and cheered. Apparently, Morgan's reign of terror had been as hard on them as on the townspeople. After a celebratory feast at the little girl's mother's restaurant, Luffy and Zoro prepared to set sail. Kobe, inspired by Luffy's actions, decided to stay and join the Marines properly, to pursue justice the right way. "You sure about this?" Luffy asked as they pushed their small boat away from the dock. "We're going to be enemies someday." "I'm counting on it," Kobe replied with newfound confidence. "When we meet again, I'll be a proper Marine." As they sailed away from Shell's town, Zoro watched Luffy curiously. The sky had cleared completely, and the strange power that had surrounded the young captain had faded, leaving only a normal-looking teenager with a straw hat. "So, about this, God of Thunder business," Zoro began. "Want to explain?" Luffy launched into the story: Thor's arrival, Garp's death, growing up trained by an Asgardian, the devil fruit, the lightning-imbued straw hat. Zoro listened silently, his expression unreadable. "You don't believe me?" Luffy asked when he finished. "After what I saw back there?" Zoro snorted. "I'd be a fool not to. But it does raise a question: if you've got all this power, why do you need a crew?" Luffy's expression softened. "Power isn't everything. Thor taught me that. He's super strong, but he was lonely when he first came to our world. Everyone needs people they can count on." He grinned suddenly. "Besides, I can't be Pirate King alone. I need the best swordsman in the world on my crew." Zoro raised an eyebrow. "Best swordsman, huh? Well, I did promise to become the greatest. Sailing with the pirate god of thunder might help me get there." "It's settled then," Luffy declared. "Next, we need a navigator. And a cook. And a doctor. And a musician." "Musician?" Zoro questioned. "Shouldn't that be lower priority? Pirates need to sing." Luffy insisted seriously. "It's important." Zoro couldn't help but laugh. Divine powers or not, his new captain was certainly unique. Their journey continued, leading them to Orange Town, where they encountered a skilled thief named Nami who hated pirates but loved money. More importantly, she was a brilliant navigator, exactly what they needed. Their first meeting was less than auspicious, with Nami tricking Luffy and handing him over to Buggy the Clown, a pirate captain with the chop-chop fruit that allowed him to split his body into pieces. Locked in a cage and scheduled for execution by cannon, Luffy found himself in a tight spot. "Any god powers that might help us out of this?" Zoro muttered, standing protectively in front of Luffy's cage despite his injuries from fighting Buggy's crew. "Working on it," Luffy replied, concentrating on his straw hat. The sky was clear, with no natural electricity to draw upon, and the iron cage blocked much of his power. "Need a storm." As Buggy ordered his crew to fire the cannon at Luffy, Nami made a split-second decision, attacking the pirate who held the match and giving Zoro the opening he needed to grab Luffy's cage and escape. Later, hiding in the deserted town, Nami approached them cautiously. "Why did you save me?" Luffy asked. "I thought you hated pirates." "I don't know," she admitted. "I just couldn't watch you die." She eyed his straw hat curiously. "That hat seems important to you." Luffy's hand moved protectively to it. "It's my treasure. A promise to become a great pirate." "There's something strange about it," Nami said, leaning closer. "Sometimes it almost seems to glow." "You can see that?" Luffy asked, surprised. Most people only noticed the glow when he was actively channeling power. "I've always been sensitive to weather changes," Nami explained. "And that hat affects the atmosphere around it. It's subtle, but—" She trailed off, eyes widening as pieces connected in her mind. "Wait. The rumors about a pirate controlling lightning in East Blue. That's you?" "That's our captain," Zoro confirmed with a smirk. "The pirate god of thunder." Nami looked skeptical. "Gods don't get trapped in cages. Wanna bet?" Luffy grinned, finally managing to connect with the latent electricity in the air. His hat began to glow faintly, and the bars of his cage groaned as he pushed against them with newly strengthened muscles. With a metallic shriek, the cage burst apart, fragments flying in all directions. Luffy stepped out, brushing iron dust from his vest casually. "I just needed a minute to focus," he explained to Nami's astonished face. "So, wanna join my crew? We need a navigator." I work alone," she stammered, backing away slightly. "And I don't join pirate crews." "Too bad," Luffy shrugged. "The offer stays open. Now, I've got a clown to punch." The confrontation with Buggy escalated quickly. The clown pirate had terrorized Orange Town, forcing residents to flee while he searched for a special chart to the Grand Line. When he discovered Nami had stolen it, his rage brought him and his entire crew to hunt her down. What he found instead was Luffy, standing in the middle of the town square, arms crossed and waiting. "So you're the famous Buggy the Clown," Luffy called out. "I hear you're looking for something that belongs to my navigator." "Your navigator?" Buggy shrieked. "That thieving cat is yours? Then you're responsible for stealing my chart to the Grand Line." "Yep." Luffy confirmed cheerfully. "We're heading to the Grand Line to find the One Piece. I'm going to be king of the pirates." Buggy's crew burst into laughter, but Buggy himself studied Luffy more carefully, his eyes narrowing. "That hat," he said suddenly. "Where did you get that straw hat?" "It's a gift from Shanks," Luffy answered, his smile fading slightly at Buggy's tone. "It's important to me." "Shanks?" Buggy's face contorted with rage. "That red-haired bastard. I should have known. He always had a way of finding troublesome things." The clown's eyes narrowed further. "And there's something else about you, something not quite human." The air around Luffy crackled with static as his temper rose. "You know Shanks?" "Know him? That man ruined my life." Buggy ranted. "Because of him, I lost a treasure map and ate a devil fruit by accident. I was meant to be rich, not a freak who can split his body apart." As Buggy continued his tirade against Shanks, Luffy's patience wore thin. Storm clouds began forming overhead, responding to his emotions. "I don't care about your history," Luffy interrupted. "But nobody insults Shanks in front of me." "Oh. And what will you do about it, brat?" Buggy sneered, his body separating into floating pieces. "My chop fruit makes me immune to cutting attacks. I'm invincible." "Let's test that," Luffy said, raising his hand to the darkening sky. "Against the power of a god." Lightning answered his call, striking his upraised hand and coursing through his rubber body. Buggy's confidence wavered as he watched Luffy begin to glow with electrical energy. What kind of devil fruit is that?" Buggy stammered. "It's not just a devil fruit," Luffy explained, electricity arcing between his fingers. "I'm rubber, yeah, but this power comes from the god of thunder himself. Want to see?" Before Buggy could respond, Luffy launched forward. Gum. His fist stretched back, trailing blue lightning. Thunder pistol. The electrified punch caught Buggy squarely in the face. Even separated into pieces, the clown pirate couldn't escape the electrical current that jumped between his body parts. He screamed as lightning coursed through him, momentarily illuminating his skeleton like in a cartoon. When the light faded, Buggy lay twitching on the ground, his body parts automatically rejoining as he lost consciousness. "Captain Buggy!" his crew cried, rushing to his side. "Take him and go," Luffy ordered, the storm clouds already beginning to dissipate above him. "And tell him that Shanks is 10 times the pirate he'll ever be." From a nearby rooftop, Nami watched the entire exchange with wide eyes. She'd seen strange things on the seas, but a rubber boy commanding lightning? That was new even for the East Blue. "Impressed?" Zoro asked, suddenly beside her. Nami jumped slightly. "He's not normal, is he?" "Definitely not," Zoro agreed. But he's got bigger dreams than any pirate I've ever met. And somehow, I think he might actually achieve them. Nami looked down at the chart to the Grand Line in her hands. She had her own reasons for needing money, a village to save, a tyrant to overthrow. Perhaps sailing with this strange crew temporarily could help her reach her goals faster. Fine, she sighed. Tell your captain I'll navigate for you. But I'm not joining permanently. And I get to keep all the treasure we find. Zoro grinned. Tell him yourself. But fair warning, once Luffy decides you're his crewmate, it's pretty hard to change his mind. With Nami reluctantly agreeing to navigate for them, temporarily, the small crew set off for the next island. Their reputation began to spread across the East Blue, stories of a rubber boy with control over lightning, accompanied by a demon swordsman and a thief with an uncanny ability to predict the weather. Marine headquarters took notice. In a dimly lit office, Fleet Admiral Sengoku reviewed the reports with growing concern. Another village liberated by this straw hat crew, he muttered, skimming the details. Defeated the Black Cat pirates at Syrup Village, recruited a sniper with unusual accuracy, but it's these accounts of weather manipulation that concern me most. Vice Admiral Tsuru, an elderly woman with decades of experience, nodded gravely. The pattern of storms following this crew is unnatural. Our meteorologists confirm it, weather systems changing course to follow a single ship, lightning strikes on clear days. Could it be a devil fruit? Sengoku wondered. None that we know of controls weather to this extent, Tsuru replied. The closest would be Dragon's rumored abilities, but this is different. More, localized. Sengoku rubbed his temples. What about the boy himself? What do we know? Monkey D. Luffy, age 17, Tsuru read from the file. Grandson of Monkey D. Garp. Garp's grandson? Sengoku's eyes widened. I thought his grandson died with him 10 years ago during that pirate raid on Dawn Island. Apparently not. Reports indicate he was raised afterward by a foreigner who settled on the island. Locals referred to this man as. Tsuru paused, her expression skeptical, the god of thunder. Sounds like superstitious nonsense, Sengoku scoffed. Perhaps. But something is amplifying this boy's abilities beyond what a simple paramecia devil fruit should allow. She laid several photographs on the desk, satellite images showing unnatural storm formation centered perfectly over the Straw Hat Pirates' known locations. Keep monitoring them, Sengoku decided. If this power grows, we may need to take more direct action. The last thing we need is another potential threat like Whitebeard roaming the seas. As the marine leaders continued their discussion, they remained unaware that elsewhere in the world, others had also taken notice of the unusual weather patterns, including a certain figure with connections to realms beyond their understanding. On a remote island shrouded in perpetual mist, a slender man with raven-black hair and eyes like green ice studied a peculiar instrument. The device, a blend of technology and what appeared to be magic, displayed energy patterns across a map of the world. There you are, the man murmured, his finger tracing a pulsing dot of energy in East Blue. After all these years, brother, I've found you. A servant approached cautiously. Lord Loki, the preparations are nearly complete. Excellent, Loki replied without looking up. Has our friend in the world government provided the information we requested? Yes, my lord. The ancient weapons of this world are indeed as powerful as the legends suggest. With them, we could potentially create a permanent bridge between realms. Loki's thin lips curved into a smile. Perfect. Monitor the Thunderer's movements closely. I want to know exactly how his powers manifest in this realm before we make our move. And the boy with him? The reports mention a human child wielding similar abilities. A mortal playing with divine power. Loki chuckled coldly. How typical of Thor to share what isn't his to give. The boy is of no concern, merely another of my brother's strays. When the time comes, he'll learn the difference between borrowed power and true godhood. Meanwhile, the Straw Hat Pirates continued their journey, unaware of the attention they'd attracted. After leaving Syrup Village with their new crewmate Usopp, a long-nosed sniper with a talent for creative lies and surprisingly accurate shooting, they set course for the floating restaurant Baratai to find a cook. Their arrival coincided with that of Don Krieg, a notorious pirate whose fleet had been decimated in the Grand Line. Krieg intended to steal the Baratai to replace his flagship, caring nothing for the chefs who called it home. Among those chefs was Sanji, a blonde-haired cook with a peculiar set of principles: never waste food and never turn away a hungry person, but also never hesitate to kick the teeth out of anyone who insulted his cooking. Luffy immediately decided Sanji would be his crew's cook, announcing it before even tasting his food. The chef refused just as quickly, citing an obligation to the restaurant's owner, Zeph. The standoff between them was interrupted by Krieg's attack. As the battle unfolded, Luffy found himself facing off against Pearl, one of Krieg's officers who fought using massive pearl-covered shields. "Your puny fists can't break through my pearl defense," Pearl boasted, his shields gleaming in the sunlight. Luffy simply grinned. "Then I won't use my fists." Removing his straw hat, he held it before him, focusing on the energy Thor had imbued into it years ago. The hat began to glow with blue light as Luffy channeled power through it. "What the hell?" Pearl faltered, taking an involuntary step back. "Thunder Crown!" Luffy shouted, placing the glowing hat back on his head. The effect was immediate. Electricity coursed through Luffy's body, causing his hair to stand on end and his eyes to glow electric blue. The air around him became charged, making small objects like silverware and plates rise slightly from nearby tables. "What kind of devil fruit is this?" Krieg demanded from across the restaurant. "It's not a devil fruit power," Sanji realized, watching in astonishment. "At least, not entirely." Luffy stepped forward, each footfall leaving tiny scorch marks on the wooden floor. Pearl raised his shields defensively, but Luffy didn't attack directly. Instead, he pointed at the pearl-covered shields themselves. "Metal conducts electricity," he said simply. A bolt of lightning shot from his finger, striking Pearl's shields. Instead of bouncing off, the electricity danced across the metal surface before conducting directly into Pearl himself. The warrior convulsed, his eyes rolling back before he collapsed in a smoking heap. "Anyone else?" Luffy asked, turning to Krieg's remaining crew. Most backed away, but Krieg himself stepped forward, encased in his famous wood steel armor. "Impressive trick," Krieg acknowledged. "But my armor is made of the strongest steel in East Blue. A little lightning won't penetrate it. Wanna bet?" Luffy challenged. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration. Luffy's lightning-enhanced attacks cracked and eventually shattered Krieg's supposedly impenetrable armor. Each blow carried not just the force of Luffy's rubber powers but the concentrated energy of Thor's divine gift. When Krieg finally fell, his crew retreated in panic, carrying their unconscious captain back to their ship. Sanji approached Luffy as the glow faded from his hat and body. "What are you?" the chef asked bluntly. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy," came the cheerful reply. "The man who's going to be king of the pirates." "That doesn't answer my question," Sanji pressed. Luffy's expression grew slightly more serious. "I was raised by Thor, the god of thunder. He shared some of his power with me, and it works really well with my rubber abilities from the gum-gum fruit." "A god?" Sanji looked skeptical. "You expect me to believe that?" "Believe what you want," Zoro interjected, joining them. "But you saw what he can do. And that's not even his full power." Sanji glanced back at the destruction Luffy had caused: shattered pearl shields, cracked wood steel armor, and the lingering smell of ozone in the air. "Whether he's got god powers or not," the chef finally said, "he's definitely saved the Baratai." He turned to Luffy. "But I still can't join your crew. I owe the old man too much." Luffy just smiled. "We'll see about that." The matter resolved itself when Zeph, recognizing Sanji's dream to find the all-blue, literally kicked him off the restaurant and onto Luffy's ship. With their new cook aboard, still protesting but secretly pleased, the crew set off toward their next destination, Arlong Park, at Nami's request. What they didn't know was that Nami had her own agenda. Upon reaching Konomi Island, she stole their ship and all their treasure, revealing she had been working for the fishman pirate Arlong all along. Or so it seemed. The truth, which Luffy discovered after pursuing her, was far more complicated. Nami's village had been under Arlong's control for years. The fishman had murdered her adoptive mother Belmere before forcing Nami to become his cartographer. She had struck a deal with him: if she could collect 100 million berries, he would free her village. After learning this from Nami's sister Nojiko, Luffy understood the navigator's true motives. But when Arlong betrayed Nami by having a corrupt marine confiscate her hard-earned money, something inside the girl broke. In desperation, she stabbed at the Arlong tattoo on her shoulder, screaming her hatred for the fishman who'd ruined her life. That's how Luffy found her, bleeding, crying, and utterly defeated. "Luffy," she whispered when she saw him. "Help me." Without a word, Luffy placed his precious straw hat on her head. "Of course," he said simply. Then he turned and began walking toward Arlong Park, calling out to Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji who had followed him. "Let's go." The four pirates marched to Arlong's base, determination in every step. As they approached, the sky began to darken unnaturally. Thunder rumbled in the distance, though no storms had been forecast. Arlong's gates stood closed before them. Luffy didn't bother looking for a key or trying to climb over. Gum Gum Thunder Pistol. His electrified fist shattered the massive gates, sending splinters flying in all directions. As the dust settled, the Straw Hat Pirates stood in the entrance, facing dozens of shocked fishmen. "Which one of you is Arlong?" Luffy demanded, though he already knew from the massive shark-like fishman seated in the center. Arlong rose slowly, towering over most of his crew. "Who wants to know?" "I'm Monkey D, Luffy. And you made my navigator cry." The fishmen burst into laughter. "Navigator? You mean Nami? She's mine, human. Has been for years." Lightning flashed overhead as Luffy's anger grew. "She doesn't belong to anyone. She's my crewmate." "Crewmate?" Arlong's laughter grew louder. "You don't understand anything. Humans are inferior creatures, barely worth keeping as slaves. Fishmen are the superior species. We can breathe underwater, we're 10 times stronger than you pathetic land dwellers." "I don't care what you are," Luffy interrupted, the air around him beginning to crackle with energy. "You hurt Nami. That's all that matters." Arlong's eyes narrowed. "There's something strange about you, human. You smell different." "That's because he's not just human," Zoro said with a predatory grin. "You picked a fight with the pirate god of thunder." "God?" Arlong scoffed. "Another human delusion. There are no gods, only the strong and the weak." "Let me show you strong," Luffy said quietly. He raised both hands to the sky, and the gathering storm responded immediately. Lightning streaked down, not in a single bolt but in a continuous stream that connected with Luffy's outstretched fingers. The electricity coursed through him, causing his body to glow with power. Arlong's crew backed away in fear, but the shark fishman held his ground, eyes widening but pride preventing retreat. "What kind of devil fruit is this?" he demanded. "It's not just a devil fruit," Luffy replied, his voice echoing with power. "It's the blessing of Thor, god of thunder, my father in all but blood. And he taught me that true strength isn't about what species you are or how hard you can hit." Luffy stepped forward, each footfall leaving a small crater in the concrete. "It's about what you're willing to fight for." What followed was less a battle than a reckoning. Arlong's lieutenants fell quickly to Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp, while Luffy focused solely on Arlong himself. The fishman's natural strength and shark-like teeth were formidable, but against Luffy's combination of rubber resilience and divine lightning, they proved insufficient. The final blow came when Arlong, desperate and enraged, grabbed his massive sword Kurabachi and charged. Luffy didn't dodge. Instead, he caught the blade between his electrified hands, the metal conducting his power directly into Arlong. The fishman convulsed but refused to fall, his hatred keeping him conscious despite the electricity coursing through him. "What, are you?" Arlong gasped. "I told you," Luffy replied. "I'm the man who's going to be king of the pirates." With that, he delivered a lightning-enhanced uppercut that sent Arlong crashing through his own headquarters, floor by floor, until the entire structure collapsed around them. As the dust settled, the villagers who had gathered to watch stood in shocked silence. Then, seeing Arlong's defeated form amid the rubble, they erupted in cheers. 8 years of tyranny had ended in a single afternoon. Nami, who had arrived during the battle, stared at the destruction with tears streaming down her face. Luffy emerged from the wreckage, battered but triumphant, and walked directly to her. "Nami," he said seriously. "You're my navigator. Now and always." She nodded, unable to speak through her emotions, and returned his straw hat. As their hands touched, a small spark of static electricity jumped between them, causing Nami to gasp softly. "Sorry," Luffy grinned. "Still got some extra juice flowing." "It's fine," she replied, wiping her tears. I guess I should get used to it if I'm sailing with the pirate god of thunder." Word of Arlong's defeat spread quickly through East Blue and beyond. The Marines, already monitoring Luffy's activities, upgraded his threat level and issued his first bounty, 30 million berries, unprecedented for a rookie from East Blue. The wanted poster, showing Luffy grinning widely beneath his straw hat with small arcs of electricity visible around him, was distributed throughout the world. Some dismissed it as photographic error, others who had witnessed his powers firsthand knew better. In the new world, red-haired Shanks received news of Luffy's growing reputation with a proud smile. "Looks like your boy is making quite a name for himself," Ben Beckman commented, handing Shanks the bounty poster. Shanks studied the image, noting the subtle glow around the straw hat he'd once worn. "Thor's done well by him. The power suits Luffy, all that energy was bound to go somewhere. You think he'll really make it? Become Pirate King?" Shanks touched the scars over his left eye thoughtfully. "If anyone can, it's him. The world better get ready, when rubber meets thunder, the seas themselves will shake." On the Grand Line, an old man with a staff watched the sky from the balcony of a castle suspended in the clouds. The atmospheric disturbances that had been rippling across the world for the past decade had grown stronger recently, concentrated in East Blue before beginning to approach the Grand Line. Crocus, the old man called to his guest, a flower-crowned doctor who was visiting from Twin Cape. "Have you been monitoring the magnetic fields?" "Hard not to," Crocus replied, joining him at the balcony. "The log pose has been acting strangely for months. Something's affecting the natural order of things." "Not something," the old man corrected. "Someone. A foreigner to our world. I've felt his presence since he arrived 10 years ago, a being of immense power, though diminished in our realm." Crocus raised an eyebrow. "And you've done nothing about this intruder?" "He's caused no harm," the old man shrugged. "In fact, he's protected a small island and raised a child there. But now, that child is on the move, and he carries a portion of the foreigner's power with him." The Straw Hat Boy, Crocus realized. Roger would have loved this, divine power mixing with the chaotic energy of our world. Like pouring oil on a fire that was already out of control. The old man nodded sagely. "The barriers between realms grow thinner. I fear our visitor may have left a door ajar when he fell into our world. And doors, once opened, can be passed through from either side." Back in East Blue, the Straw Hat Pirates celebrated their victories and Nami's freedom at her village. The party lasted 3 days, with Luffy eating enough for 10 men and Zoro drinking enough for 20. On the 4th morning, as they prepared to set sail for the Grand Line, Luffy stood at the bow of their ship, the Going Merry, gifted to them by Usopp's friend Kaya. His hat glowed faintly in the early light, responding to his excited energy. "Next stop, the Grand Line," he declared. "Where I'll find the One Piece and become king of the pirates." His crew gathered around him, each with their own dreams but united in their loyalty to their unusual captain. "The world's greatest swordsman," Zoro affirmed. "A map of the entire world," Nami added. "Brave warrior of the sea," Usopp declared with only a slight tremble in his voice. "The All Blue," Sanji finished, lighting a cigarette. Luffy grinned at them all, feeling a surge of pride and affection. Thor had taught him that true power came from protecting those you cared about. Looking at his nakama, Luffy understood that lesson better than ever. As if sensing his thoughts, storm clouds gathered briefly overhead, and a single lightning bolt struck the sea beside their ship, not threatening, but like a salute or blessing. "Thor approves," Luffy laughed. "Your thunder god father is watching us?" Usopp asked nervously. "Maybe," Luffy replied, looking toward the horizon. "He said our worlds are connected somehow. That's why he can't go home but can still use some of his powers here." "Do you think we'll meet him someday?" Nami asked. Luffy adjusted his hat, feeling the familiar energy pulsing within it. "I hope so. I've got a lot to tell him about all the adventures we've had. And all the ones still to come," Sanji added. With that, the Going Merry set sail toward Reverse Mountain and the entrance to the Grand Line. Behind them, the sky cleared to perfect blue, while ahead, storm clouds gathered as if beckoning them forward. What none of them realized was that they were sailing not just toward adventure, but toward a convergence of worlds, where gods and pirates, myths and monsters would collide in ways none of them could imagine. And somewhere, in the spaces between realms, ancient eyes watched their progress with growing interest. Chapter 3, Gods Among Pirates. The Grand Line wasn't just dangerous, it was flat-out insane. Luffy had heard the stories, but experiencing it firsthand was something else entirely. One minute they'd be sailing under clear skies, the next caught in a snowstorm, then rain, then blazing heat. "Is this normal?" Luffy asked, hanging from the mast as Nami frantically worked to keep them on course. "Nothing's normal on the Grand Line," Nami shouted over the howling wind. "But this is weird even for here." The Going Merry creaked and groaned as waves crashed against its sides. They'd entered the Grand Line through Reverse Mountain just days ago, had a brief stop at Whiskey Peak, which turned out to be a nest of bounty hunters they'd promptly dealt with, and were now headed toward Little Garden according to the log pose. But the weather had turned bizarre even by Grand Line standards. Lightning flashed continuously overhead, though the storm clouds didn't look natural, they swirled in patterns that reminded Luffy of the day Thor had first crashed onto Dawn Island. "Guys!" Usopp called from the crow's nest. "The compass is going crazy." Nami checked her log pose. The needle spun wildly, unable to fix on a direction. "This isn't right. Something's interfering with the magnetic field." Zoro, who'd been napping despite the chaos, cracked an eye open. "Captain, this feel familiar to you?" Luffy nodded, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Yeah. Something's coming through." "Through?" Sanji repeated, lighting a cigarette despite the wind and rain. "Through what?" "Between worlds," Luffy explained, adjusting his straw hat which had begun glowing faintly. "Thor told me this is what happens when the barrier's thin. It's how he got here in the first place." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They'd all witnessed Luffy's strange powers and heard his tales of being raised by a thunder god, but this was the first time they'd faced direct evidence of other realms. A massive lightning bolt suddenly struck the sea just yards from their ship, causing the water to boil and steam. When the light faded, a perfect circle of calm water remained, surrounded by the churning seas. "What the hell?" Zoro muttered, hand moving to his swords. In the center of the circle, the water began to rise, forming a pillar that twisted and solidified into a humanoid shape. The liquid fell away, revealing a tall, slender man with raven-black hair and gleaming green eyes. He wore armor of gold and green, ornate yet battle-ready, and carried a scepter that pulsed with eerie blue energy. The stranger stood on the water's surface as if it were solid ground, surveying the Mary with cold amusement. "So this is my brother's little project," he said, his voice smooth as silk but sharp as a blade. "A pirate ship. How quaint. Who the hell are you?" Sanji demanded, stepping protectively in front of Nami. The stranger smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I am Loki, god of mischief, rightful king of Asgard." His gaze fixed on Luffy. "And you, child, are wearing something that doesn't belong to you." Luffy's hand moved instinctively to his straw hat, which now glowed brightly with blue energy. "Shanks gave me this hat. And Thor added his power to it." "Thor." Loki spat the name like a curse. Always so generous with what isn't his to give. Divine power was never meant for mortals. Nami stepped forward, ignoring Sanji's attempt to hold her back. "What do you want with us?" "With you?" "Nothing," Loki replied dismissively. "You're merely insects caught in the wake of greater events. I'm here for what my brother left behind, the power he so foolishly scattered in this realm." His eyes narrowed at Luffy. "Starting with what he gave to you, boy." Luffy jumped down from the mast, landing on the deck between Loki and his crew. "You're Thor's brother. He told me about you. Said you tried to take over Asgard, that you were responsible for him falling to our world. Is that what he told you?" Loki chuckled. "How simplistic. I merely opened a door that was already there. The connection between our realms has existed for millennia. The people of this world once called Asgardians gods, built temples, offered sacrifices." His voice hardened. "Then they forgot us. Found new powers, new gods, to worship, devil fruits, ancient weapons." The crew tensed at the mention of ancient weapons. "Those were supposed to be secret, the stuff of legends. But I'm not here to give history lessons," Loki continued. "I've spent years studying this realm, learning its secrets. I know about Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus, weapons with power to rival the Bifrost itself. With them, I can create permanent pathways between worlds. Asgard will be mine, and this world a fitting colony for my new empire." Luffy stepped forward, his body beginning to crackle with electricity. "I don't care about any of that. You threatened my crew and insulted Thor. That's enough reason to kick your ass." Loki looked genuinely amused. "You fight me? Child, do you have any idea what you're dealing with? I am a god, not some East Blue pirate you can intimidate with parlor tricks. I beat up plenty of people who thought they were untouchable," Luffy replied, stretching his arms in preparation. "Gods, pirates, marines, doesn't matter to me." "Very well," Loki sighed, twirling his scepter casually. "A demonstration seems necessary." Before anyone could react, Loki vanished, then reappeared directly on their deck. With a casual gesture of his scepter, he sent Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and Nami flying backward, pinned against the cabin wall by invisible force. "Now then," he said, turning to Luffy. "Let's see what my brother's little protege can do." Luffy didn't waste time with words. His fist stretched back, crackling with electricity. Gum Gum Thunder Pistol. The attack shot forward with devastating speed, but Loki merely tilted his head to the side, letting the electrified fist pass harmlessly by. "Predictable," the god sneered. "Thor always did favor the direct approach." Luffy didn't slow down. His body snapped forward, following his extended fist. Gum Gum Thunder Gatling. A flurry of lightning-charged punches rained toward Loki, who simply created duplicates of himself, illusions that confused Luffy's targeting. The real Loki stepped casually through the barrage untouched. "Is this really the best you can do?" he taunted. After a decade of Thor's tutelage. With a flick of his scepter, he sent a blast of energy that caught Luffy square in the chest. Despite his rubber body, Luffy felt the impact like a physical blow, sending him crashing into the mast. Luffy, his crewmates called out in alarm, still struggling against Loki's magical restraints. Luffy staggered to his feet, blood trickling from his lip. "That the best you can do?" he countered, grinning despite the pain. Loki's smile faltered slightly. Brave words from a mortal about to. He was interrupted as Luffy's hat suddenly pulsed with intense blue light. The straw hat lifted off Luffy's head on its own, hovering between him and Loki. "What is this?" Loki demanded, suddenly wary. The hat spun rapidly, generating a vortex of electrical energy that expanded outward. Both Luffy and Loki were thrown back by the force, landing at opposite ends of the ship. The restraints holding the crew disappeared as Loki's concentration broke. "Captain!" Zoro called, rushing to Luffy's side. "What's happening?" "It's Thor," Luffy said, staring at his floating hat in awe. "He's trying to come through." The vortex expanded, tearing a hole in the very air above the ship. Through the rift, they glimpsed another world, golden spires and a rainbow bridge stretching across the cosmos. "No!" Loki snarled, raising his scepter. "Not yet. I'm not ready." A massive bolt of lightning shot through the portal, striking the deck of the Going Merry. When the blinding light faded, a towering figure stood there, broad-shouldered, golden-haired, with a beard now streaked with gray but eyes that crackled with the same electric blue energy that Luffy sometimes showed. "Thor!" Luffy shouted, his face splitting into the biggest grin his crew had ever seen. The god of thunder turned, his stern expression immediately softening at the sight of the young pirate. "Luffy," he rumbled, voice like distant thunder. "You've grown, my son. You came back." Luffy launched himself at Thor, rubber arms wrapping around the god several times in an enthusiastic hug. "I never left entirely," Thor replied, ruffling Luffy's hair affectionately. "Part of me has always been with you, through the hat." His expression hardened as he turned to face his brother. "Though I see you've met some unwelcome family as well." Loki had recovered his composure, standing with his scepter at the ready. "Brother," he sneered. "How touching. Reunited with your pet mortal at last." "Loki," Thor acknowledged grimly. "I should have known you'd find your way here eventually. Your hunger for power was always insatiable." "Power? No, brother. Birthright." Loki's eyes gleamed dangerously. "This realm stands at a crossroads, ancient forces stirring, weapons of mass destruction waiting to be claimed. Did you think I wouldn't notice the connection? The world government here guards secrets older than Asgard itself." Thor's grip tightened on Mjolnir. "Whatever schemes you're planning, they end now." "Do they?" Loki smirked. "I've spent years preparing while you played father to pirates. My allies in this world are already moving into position." As if on cue, the horizon darkened with approaching ships, the white sails and seagull insignia of the Marines clearly visible. "Perfect timing," Loki said smugly. "It seems your little pirate's reputation has preceded him. The world government doesn't take kindly to gods threatening their authority." Nami scrambled to her navigation charts. "That's a full battleship. And those flags, that's an admiral's ship." "An admiral?" Usopp squeaked. "We can't fight a marine admiral and a god." Thor turned to Luffy, concern evident in his eyes. "What have you been up to, boy?" Luffy grinned sheepishly. "Just the usual. Beat up some bad guys, help some friends, got a bounty. 30 million berries and rising," Zoro supplied helpfully. "They're calling him the Thunder Pirate now." "I see you've been putting my lessons to good use," Thor said with a hint of pride. Loki began to fade, his form becoming translucent. "As entertaining as this reunion is, I have other matters to attend to. The Marines will keep you occupied while I secure what I came for." He fixed Luffy with a cold stare. "We'll meet again, little god. Next time, I'll take back what my brother gave you, and more. Wait. Thor lunged forward, but his hand passed through Loki's already vanishing form. Raftel, brother, Loki's voice lingered after his body disappeared. All paths lead there. The place where worlds touch. As Loki vanished completely, the marine ships drew closer, cannons at the ready. Well, Sanji commented dryly, lighting a fresh cigarette. This day just keeps getting better. Fleet Admiral Sengoku stood at the bow of his flagship, studying the bizarre weather phenomena through binoculars. The Going Merry was visible in the distance, surrounded by the unnatural storm that seemed to follow the Straw Hat Pirates. "Sir," a marine officer reported, "we've confirmed it's the Straw Hat crew. But our sensors are detecting energy readings off the charts. Whatever's happening on that ship, it's not a normal devil fruit." "I can see that," Sengoku replied tersely. The sky above the pirate ship swirled with clouds that moved against the wind, lightning striking in patterns too regular to be natural. "And there's someone new on board, someone large. Reinforcements? Perhaps." Sengoku lowered his binoculars. "Signal Admiral Akiji. It's time to test just how godly this pirate god of thunder really is." At the rear of the ship, Akiji lounged against the railing, seemingly half asleep despite the approaching battle. The tall, curly-haired admiral yawned widely before acknowledging the messenger. "Fleet Admiral wants me to handle this personally. What a pain." He stretched lazily. "But orders are orders, I guess." Akiji stepped onto the railing, then casually dropped over the side. Instead of splashing into the sea, he landed on a suddenly frozen patch of water. With each step forward, the ocean froze beneath his feet, creating a path of ice toward the Going Merry. Back on the pirate ship, Thor and Luffy stood side by side, watching the approaching threat. "Marine admirals are no joke," Luffy warned. "They've got crazy strong powers." "As do we," Thor replied, twirling Mjolnir. "Your crew should take shelter. This battle will not be for the faint of heart." Zoro stepped forward, hand on his swords. "With all due respect, Thunder God, we don't abandon our captain." "Yeah." Usopp added, knees shaking but voice firm. "We're the Straw Hat Pirates. We stick together." He paused. "Though maybe I'll stick together from behind that barrel over there." Thor looked at the crew, a swordsman with unwavering loyalty, a navigator with fierce determination, a cook with burning passion, and a sniper whose courage, while fragile, was genuine. He nodded with approval. "Luffy has chosen his companions well. Very well, we fight together." Nami pointed urgently toward the approaching marine ships. "Speaking of fighting, look." A lone figure walked across the water toward them, leaving a frozen trail behind him. Even at a distance, the air temperature around the Merry began to drop, frost forming on the railings. "That's him," Luffy said grimly. "Admiral Akiji. He ate the ice fruit." "Ice, is it?" Thor said, electricity crackling around Mjolnir. "Then we shall bring the thunder." As Akiji drew closer, they could make out his relaxed posture and bored expression, a stark contrast to the power he represented. "Straw Hat," the admiral called casually. "Normally I might have let a rookie like you sail a while longer before getting involved. But..." His gaze shifted to Thor. "Your new friend there has Sengoku worried. Care to introduce us?" Luffy stepped forward, standing proudly on the figurehead of the Going Merry. "This is Thor, God of Thunder. He raised me after Gramps died." "A god, huh?" Akiji scratched his head. "That's a new one. But whether he's a god, a devil fruit user, or just some strong guy with a hammer doesn't really matter." His laid-back demeanor suddenly shifted, eyes sharpening. "The world government can't allow unknown powers to roam freely, especially ones that might rival the ancient weapons." Thor frowned. "You speak of weapons beyond mortal understanding. Loki mentioned them as well." "Did he now?" Akiji's eyes narrowed further. Then we definitely have a problem. If there are more like you seeking those weapons. He sighed deeply. What a pain. But I have my orders. Without further warning, Akiji thrust both hands forward. Ice Age. A wave of freezing air shot toward the Going Merry, threatening to encase the entire ship in ice. Thor stepped forward, swinging Mjolnir in a rapid circle. Stand behind me, he commanded. The hammer generated a whirlwind that met Akiji's freezing attack head-on. The two forces clashed, creating a bizarre zone where ice crystals and lightning bolts intermingled, neither able to overcome the other. Impressive, Akiji acknowledged. You're the real deal, then. As are you, Thor replied. Few mortals have withstood Mjolnir's fury so easily. Akiji shrugged. Logia devil fruits are troublesome that way. But let's see how you handle this. The admiral suddenly dissolved into ice particles, then reformed directly on the ship's deck, bypassing Thor's defenses entirely. Before anyone could react, he reached out and grabbed Luffy by the throat. Ice time, he intoned, frost immediately spreading from his hand to Luffy's rubber body. Luffy! Thor roared, spinning to attack. But something unexpected happened. As the ice began to cover Luffy, blue electricity sparked from his straw hat, countering the freezing effect. Luffy's body glowed with divine energy, creating steam where it met Akiji's ice. What the Admiral began. Luffy grinned despite the cold. Told ya. I'm the pirate god of thunder. He grabbed Akiji's freezing arm with both hands, channeling Thor's power through his rubber body and into the Admiral. Akiji's eyes widened as electricity coursed through his ice form, something that should have been impossible for his Logia type. Divine energy isn't the same as normal lightning, Thor explained with grim satisfaction. It transcends the physical laws of any realm. Akiji released Luffy and jumped back, genuine surprise showing on his normally impassive face. Parts of his ice body had actually melted from the divine lightning, something no ordinary attack had achieved before. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting indeed. The Admiral's momentary distraction gave Zoro and Sanji their opening. They attacked simultaneously, Zoro with a dragon twister slash, Sanji with a diable jam kick. Akiji barely managed to dodge, forced to solidify to avoid the worst of their attacks. Your crew's not bad either, Straw Hat, he commented, reforming his partially damaged ice body. But we're just getting started. The ocean around the Going Merry suddenly began to freeze rapidly, trapping the ship in place. At the same time, the marine battleships drew closer, cannons aimed and ready. We need to move. Nami shouted. If they surround us, we're finished. Thor looked to Luffy. I can clear a path, but your ship will need wind to escape. Luffy nodded, understanding immediately. Everyone hold on to something. Usopp, secure the sails. The crew scrambled to prepare as Thor launched himself into the air, Mjolnir leading the way. Once airborne, he began spinning his hammer rapidly, generating a massive thunderstorm directly above them. Meanwhile, Akiji hadn't been idle. Seeing Thor take to the skies, he created an enormous ice spear and hurled it at the airborne god. Look out! Luffy shouted. Thor's reflexes were godly indeed. He shattered the ice spear with Mjolnir, but the fragments still peppered him, drawing blood. The god of thunder's expression darkened as lightning gathered around him in response to his anger. You fight well, Ice Warrior, Thor called down. But you face the might of Asgard now. He brought Mjolnir down with full force, sending a devastating lightning bolt into the frozen sea around the Merry. The ice shattered explosively, creating a clear channel through the marine blockade. Simultaneously, the storm he generated produced powerful winds that filled the Going Merry's sails. Now! Thor bellowed. Sail! Nami didn't need to be told twice. With expert precision, she directed the crew to position the ship for maximum speed through the newly created escape route. Akiji attempted to refreeze their path, but found himself engaged by Luffy, who had stretched his arms to grab the admiral from behind. "Your fight's with me," Luffy declared. "Gum Gum Thunder Bell." He slammed his electrified head forward, connecting with Akiji's back and sending divine lightning through the admiral's ice body once more. Akiji grunted in genuine pain, then spun to face his attacker. "You're becoming a serious problem, Straw Hat," he said, ice reforming where Luffy's attack had melted it. "If you had just been a normal rookie pirate." "Nothing about my captain is normal," Zoro interrupted, joining Luffy with all three swords drawn. "That's why we follow him. And that's why we're getting the hell out of here," Nami added, grabbing both Luffy and Zoro by their collars as the Mary surged forward through the opening Thor had created. "Now." Luffy stretched one arm to grab Akiji's shoulder. "This isn't over, Ice Guy. But we've got a god to catch first." With that, he snapped back to the ship, leaving the admiral standing alone on a shrinking ice floe as the Mary sailed swiftly away. Thor descended from the sky, landing gracefully on the deck as they made their escape. Behind them, the marine ships opened fire, but their cannonballs fell short as Thor's storm winds carried the pirate ship beyond their range. "Your marine admirals are formidable," Thor acknowledged, watching Akiji grow smaller in the distance. "Few beings in any realm could have withstood Mjolnir's lightning as he did." "Told you they were no joke," Luffy replied, adjusting his straw hat which had finally stopped glowing. "But we've got bigger problems now. What was Loki talking about with those ancient weapons? And what's Raftel got to do with it?" The crew gathered around as Thor's expression grew grave. "It's time I told you the full truth, Luffy. About why I came to this world, and the connection between our realms that Loki seeks to exploit." As the Going Merry sailed into calmer waters, Thor explained what he had learned during his years stranded on Dawn Island. "The 9 realms of Asgardian cosmology have always had thin points, where the barriers between worlds weaken," he began, seated cross-legged on the deck with the crew gathered around him. "During my battle with Loki 10 years ago, we found ourselves fighting near such a point, a bridge between Asgard and this world. Like Reverse Mountain is to the Grand Line?" Nami suggested, trying to understand. "Similar, yes," Thor nodded. "When I fell through, I was greatly weakened. The laws of this realm don't fully accommodate Asgardian power. It's why I couldn't simply return home, and why my abilities were diminished." "But not gone completely," Luffy pointed out. "No, not completely," Thor agreed with a small smile. "Enough remained for me to teach you, to help protect Dawn Island." His expression turned serious again. "What I didn't realize until later was why this particular realm connected so strongly to Asgard. The answer lies in what your people call the ancient weapons." The crew exchanged concerned glances. The ancient weapons were spoken of only in whispers: Pluton, Poseidon, Uranus, weapons of such devastating power that they could destroy the world if misused. "Long ago," Thor continued, "beings much like Asgardians visited this world. Your ancestors may have called them gods, or they may have simply been travelers from beyond the sky. They left behind knowledge and technology far beyond mortal understanding." "The ancient weapons," Sanji murmured. "Yes, but not just weapons," Thor corrected. "Tools for creation as well as destruction. The power to reshape lands, control the seas, command the very air itself." "And this Raftel place Loki mentioned?" Zoro asked. "What's so special about it?" Thor's eyes met Luffy's directly. "Raftel is where the final road Poneglyph leads. It is said to be the location of the One Piece, the treasure your predecessor Gold Roger discovered." "You know about the One Piece?" Luffy exclaimed, bouncing with excitement. "What is it? Tell me." "I don't know precisely," Thor admitted. "But based on what I've pieced together during my time here, and what Heimdall could see from Asgard, the One Piece isn't just treasure as mortals understand it. It's knowledge, the truth about this world's history, about the Void Century, and about the bridges between realms." "So the One Piece could be a way for you to get home?" Luffy asked, suddenly subdued. Thor nodded slowly. Perhaps. But it seems Loki has discovered this as well. If he reaches Raftel first and gains control of the ancient weapons, he could tear open permanent pathways between worlds, not just to Asgard, but to realms far darker and more dangerous. Like bringing an army, Usopp realized, his face paling. Worse, Thor said grimly. Like bringing chaos itself into this world. A heavy silence fell over the group as they processed this information. Finally, Luffy stood up, adjusting his straw hat with determination. Then it's simple, he declared. We need to find the One Piece before Loki does. Luffy, Nami began hesitantly, that's what we were already trying to do, but it's not that easy. We need all 4 road poneglyphs to find Raftel, and those are guarded by the 4 emperors of the sea. So we'll get them, Luffy shrugged, as if taking on the 4 most powerful pirates in the world was a minor inconvenience. Thor chuckled, rising to his feet as well. Your confidence reminds me of myself in younger days, Luffy. But Nami speaks wisely. This will not be a simple task. Nothing worth doing ever is, Luffy replied with his characteristic grin. Besides, I've got my crew, and now I've got you too. The original Thunder God and the pirate God of Thunder, who can stop us? The Marines, for one, Sanji pointed out. After that encounter with Akiji, they'll be hunting us more actively than ever. And Loki has a head start, Zoro added. He's been planning this for years, according to him. Ah, but he lacks one thing, Thor said, placing a hand on Luffy's shoulder. He lacks a son who has sailed these seas, who has made allies in this world, and who carries the will to protect it. Luffy beamed at Thor's words. For years he had carried the Asgardian's teachings and power with him, but having Thor himself acknowledge him as a son filled him with pride beyond measure. Then it's decided, he announced to his crew. We're finding the road poneglyphs, getting to Raftel, and stopping Loki. Oh, and I'm still going to be king of the pirates. Despite the gravity of the situation, his Nakama couldn't help but smile at their captain's unwavering enthusiasm. One problem, Nami interjected. We don't even know where the first road poneglyph is. Actually, Thor said thoughtfully, I might be able to help with that. During my years on Dawn Island, I studied what I could about this world's history. The red poneglyph is said to be on an island ruled by a powerful pirate known as Big Mom. Whole Cake Island, Sanji confirmed, having heard rumors of the Emperor's territory. In the New World. Then that's where we're heading. Luffy decided instantly. We can't just sail directly to the New World, Nami protested. We need to follow the log pose, build our strength, gather. She was interrupted by a sudden shout from Usopp in the crow's nest. Island ahead. And it's moving. Everyone rushed to the railing. In the distance, an enormous turtle-like creature carried what appeared to be a prehistoric jungle on its back, Little Garden, their next destination according to the log pose. We'll figure out our next move after we explore this island, Luffy declared, already excited about the new adventure before them. Maybe there are dinosaurs. Or giants. Or giant dinosaurs. Thor laughed heartily, the sound like rolling thunder. You haven't changed, Luffy. Always rushing toward the next adventure. Why wait? Luffy grinned. Especially now that you're here. This is gonna be awesome. While the Straw Hats made landfall on Little Garden, elsewhere in the Grand Line, Loki was advancing his plans. The god of mischief stood in an opulent office, facing a man whose very presence radiated cold authority. World government insignia decorated the walls, and den mushy communication devices lined a large desk. The situation has changed, Loki said smoothly. My brother has arrived in this realm fully now, not just as the fragment of power he left in the boy's hat. The man behind the desk, a cipher pull agent of the highest rank, steepled his fingers thoughtfully. This complicates matters. One god was problematic enough. Two, potentially at odds with each other, could draw unwanted attention to our operations. Which is why we must accelerate the timetable, Loki pressed. Your government has been searching for the ancient weapons for centuries. I've given you more information in 2 years than you discovered in the previous 800. All I ask in return is passage to Raftel when the time comes. And control of the weapons afterward, the agent added pointedly. That was never part of our agreement. Loki's green eyes gleamed dangerously. Plans evolve. With Thor in the picture, we'll need the full power of Pluton at minimum. Unless your Marines enjoyed their encounter with him and the boy. The agent's expression soured. Reports had already arrived detailing Admiral Akiji's unexpected difficulty with the Straw Hat Pirates and their new ally. The fact that a Logia user of Akiji's caliber had been even temporarily challenged was deeply concerning to the world government. We'll deploy CP-9 to Water 7, he finally decided. If the rumors are true, the Pluton blueprints are still held by the shipwrights there. And will increase surveillance on Fishman Island where Poseidon is prophesied to appear. Excellent, Loki smiled thinly. And the boy? Thor's little protege? A full buster call seems appropriate at this point. The 5 Elder Stars have authorized it given the circumstances. Loki nodded with satisfaction. A buster call, the world government's most devastating military operation, involving 5 vice admirals and 10 battleships, would certainly keep Thor occupied while he secured the ancient weapons. Just remember our arrangement, Loki said as he turned to leave. Your government gets what it has always wanted, control of the seas, elimination of the pirate era. And I get my pathway home, with sufficient power to ensure Asgard's compliance. As the door closed behind the Asgardian, the Cypher Pole agent reached for a secure Den Mushi. Connect me to Mariehua immediately. Inform the 5 Elder Stars that Operation Ragnarok is now active. Back on Little Garden, the Straw Hats had discovered the island was indeed home to giants, 2 legendary warriors named Dori and Bragi who had been dueling for over 100 years. The prehistoric setting teemed with dinosaurs and massive plants that delighted Luffy to no end. Thor found himself equally impressed by the giants, who reminded him of his old friends from Jotunheim. He and Luffy sat with Dori around a massive bonfire, sharing stories and meat. So you're really a thunder god? Dori asked, examining Thor with interest. We giants have our own legends about gods, though most dismiss them as fairy tales these days. In my experience, Thor replied, taking a swig from a barrel of ale that would have intoxicated a normal human instantly, most legends contain seeds of truth. The gods may change their names and faces across realms, but power recognizes power. And you raised this little rubber man? Dori laughed, slapping Luffy on the back hard enough to send him face first into the dirt. He's got spirit, I'll give him that. Luffy extracted himself from the ground, grinning despite the impact. Thor taught me everything. Well, except the rubber stuff, that came from eating the gum fruit. A curious combination, Dori acknowledged. Divine lightning and rubber flesh. The powers that be must have a sense of humor. Or a sense of purpose, Thor said more seriously. Few things happen by pure chance across the realms. Luffy eating that specific devil fruit, our paths crossing, there is design in such coincidences. Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by an explosion that rocked the island, Dori's duel with Bragi beginning anew, as it had every time the central volcano erupted for a century. As the giants clashed with weapons the size of small ships, Thor watched with appreciation for their warrior spirit. Their honor reminds me of home, he remarked to Luffy. Asgardians respect such dedication to combat. Yeah, they're awesome. Luffy agreed enthusiastically. Hey, when all this stuff with Loki is over, can I visit Asgard? Meet Odin and all your warrior friends? Thor's expression softened with a hint of melancholy. I would like nothing better than to show you the golden halls of Asgard, my son. But first, we must ensure there are still realms left to travel between. Their conversation was cut short by shouts from the forest. Zoro and Usopp came running, pursued by what appeared to be wax sculptures come to life. We've got trouble. Usopp called, hiding behind Thor immediately. It's Mr. 3 from Baroque Works. He's got Nami. Zoro, bleeding from fresh wounds, explained quickly. They're after the bounties on the giants. Ambushed us when we split up. Thor stood, Mjolnir materializing in his hand from where it had been resting nearby. Bounty hunters who target honorable warriors. This offends Asgardian sensibilities. They've got a weird wax power, Usopp added. Mr. 3 can create anything from candle wax, including living weapons. Wax? Luffy and Thor exchanged glances, then both broke into identical grins. What melts wax? Luffy asked rhetorically. Heat, Thor replied, electricity crackling around Mjolnir. And lightning is really hot. Luffy finished, his body beginning to spark with borrowed divine energy. They found Mr. 3 in a clearing, where he had erected an enormous wax sculpture resembling a multi-tiered cake. Nami and the wounded giant Broggy were being encased in hardening wax, slowly turning into living statues. Ah, more guests for my art exhibition. Mr. 3 proclaimed, his hair styled into a literal number 3. The more the merrier. Thor assessed the situation with the eye of a warrior who had fought in 1,000 battles across multiple realms. The wax hardens from the outside in, he observed. We must act quickly before it reaches their vital organs. I'll handle Mr. 3, Luffy decided. You free Nami and the giant. Thor nodded, pleased with Luffy's tactical thinking. In the decade he'd raised the boy, he'd tried to teach not just power but strategy. It seemed those lessons had taken root. Luffy stretched his arms back, channeling electricity through his rubber body. Gum Gum Thunder Bazooka. The powerful double palm strike shattered the ground as Mr. 3 barely managed to create a wax wall for protection. Even so, the heat from Luffy's lightning-enhanced attack began melting the barrier immediately. Meanwhile, Thor raised Mjolnir to the sky. Rather than calling down a destructive bolt, he channeled a continuous current of electricity into the hammer, causing it to glow white-hot. Asgardian Forge, he proclaimed, touching Mjolnir to the base of the wax structure. The effect was immediate. Like a hot knife through butter, the superheated hammer began melting the wax construction from the bottom up. Within seconds, the entire structure destabilized, allowing Nami and Broggy to break free from their softened restraints. That's impossible. Mr. 3 shrieked, watching his masterpiece dissolve. My special candelabra is impervious to. He didn't finish the sentence as Luffy's electrified fist connected with his face, sending him flying into a nearby boulder. Nothing's impervious to the Thunder Gods, Luffy declared, standing back to back with Thor as they faced the remaining Baroque Works agents. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration of divine power. Thor and Luffy moved in perfect synchronization, their fighting styles different but complementary. Where Thor was all raw power and millennia of combat experience, Luffy was unpredictable rubber flexibility enhanced by divine lightning. The Baroque Works agents never stood a chance. Within minutes, they lay defeated, Mr. 3's wax creations melted to puddles around the clearing. That was awesome. Luffy cheered, high-fiving Thor with a resounding clap of thunder. We should fight together more often. Thor laughed heartily, clapping Luffy on the shoulder. Indeed. You've grown into a formidable warrior, my son. Your grandfather would be proud. The moment of celebration was interrupted by a rumbling from deep within the island. The ground began to shake violently, trees toppling in the distance. That's not the volcano, Dory said with concern, having joined them after the battle. Thor's expression darkened. No, it's not natural. I sense magic. Asgardian in nature. A green glow emanated from the center of the island, shooting into the sky like a beacon. The air shimmered with energy that made Luffy's hat vibrate in response. Loki, Thor growled. He's opened another portal. Without waiting for discussion, Luffy was already running toward the source of the disturbance. Come on. We can't let him get away. The crew followed, with Thor and the giants close behind. They reached a clearing where an ancient stone structure, previously hidden by the jungle, now stood revealed. Symbols carved into the weathered rock glowed with the same green energy that shot skyward. Loki stood at the center, his scepter plunged into a pedestal that appeared designed specifically for it. Next to him stood a woman with dark hair and a cold smile, wearing a cowboy hat and revealing outfit. Nico Robin. Nami gasped in recognition. The archaeologist working for Crocodile. You know her? Thor asked sharply. She can read the poneglyphs, Nami explained quickly. One of the few people in the world with that ability. Loki looked up as they entered the clearing, his expression one of mild annoyance rather than surprise. Always interrupting at the crucial moment, brother. Some things never change. Step away from the portal, Loki, Thor commanded, Mjolnir crackling with energy. Whatever you're planning, it ends here. Loki smiled thinly. On the contrary. It's only beginning. He gestured to the structure around them. Do you know what this is? A waypoint, created millennia ago when our kind first visited this realm. A marker on the road to Raftel. The Void Century, Robin spoke up, her scholarly interest evident despite her alliance with the god of mischief. When the ancient kingdom fell, when the world government erased 100 years of history, it coincides with the last time beings like you visited our world. Indeed, Loki confirmed. Your world government has been quite thorough in erasing all evidence of Asgardian influence. But they missed a few pieces. He twisted his scepter, causing the green beam to intensify. Such as this handy map. Above them, the energy coalesced into what was unmistakably a three-dimensional map of the Grand Line, with pulsing points of light indicating specific locations. The road poneglyphs, Robin breathed. All 4 locations, revealed. Not just those, Loki corrected smugly. The ancient weapons as well. Pluton in Water 7, Poseidon in Fishman Island, and Uranus. He paused, eyes gleaming as he looked directly at Luffy. Well, that's the interesting one. Enough. Thor hurled Mjolnir at the pedestal where Loki's scepter was inserted. With inhuman speed, Loki withdrew the scepter and sidestepped, allowing Mjolnir to shatter the ancient stone instead. The map above them flickered but remained visible for several more seconds before dissolving. Too late, brother, Loki taunted. I've seen all I needed. And now, so has my associate. Robin's face remained impassive, but her eyes had clearly memorized the map's details. Fascinating, was all she said. Luffy stepped forward, fists clenched. I don't care about your stupid map. You're trying to hurt my crew and my dad, and that means I'm taking you down. Loki's eyebrow raised at Luffy's reference to Thor as his father. How touching. The Thunderer playing family with mortals again. His expression hardened. But playtime is over. With a gesture of his scepter, Loki sent a blast of energy directly at Luffy. Thor moved to intercept, but Robin suddenly sprouted multiple arms from the ground that grabbed his ankles, slowing him just enough to miss. The blast hit Luffy square in the chest, sending him flying backward into a massive tree. Unlike physical attacks that his rubber body could absorb, Loki's magic struck him on a deeper level, causing him to cough blood as he struggled to stand. Luffy! Thor roared, breaking free from Robin's grip and rushing to the boy's side. I'm fine, Luffy insisted, wiping blood from his mouth as he staggered upright. Just caught me off guard. Loki hadn't followed up his attack. Instead, he and Robin were already stepping into a swirling green portal that had formed behind them. Savor this reunion while you can, brother, Loki called back. The next time we meet will be at Raftel, when I remake both our worlds in my image. Wait! Luffy shouted, stretching his arm to grab them, but the portal closed just as his hand reached it, leaving him clutching empty air. Thor helped Luffy steady himself, concern evident in his eyes. Are you truly alright? Loki's magic can be deadly to mortals. I'm tougher than I look, Luffy grinned, though it was strained. Besides, I'm not fully mortal anymore, right? Not with your power running through me. Thor studied him thoughtfully. Perhaps not. The energies we've shared over the years have changed you in ways even I don't fully understand. The rest of the crew and the giants joined them, examining the shattered pedestal and the now inactive stone structure. So Loki knows where all the road poneglyphs are, Zoro summarized grimly. And the locations of these ancient weapons. And he's working with Baroque works, which means Crocodile is involved, Sanji added, lighting a cigarette. One of the 7 warlords of the sea, backed by a god from another world. Great. Actually, Nami interjected, this might work in our favor. If Robin saw the map. She did, Thor confirmed. The woman with the many arms memorized it completely. I could see it in her eyes. Then we just need to get that information from her, Luffy concluded, his energy already returning. And Baroque Works base is in Alabasta, which is where we're headed after this island anyway. It seems our path is clear, Thor agreed. Though I doubt Loki will make it easy for us. As if in response to his words, the ground shook again, this time from a massive explosion out at sea. They rushed back through the jungle toward the shore, arriving in time to see marine battleships surrounding the island, cannons firing continuously. Buster call, Dory growled, recognizing the formation. The world government's ultimate weapon against those they want erased. But why here? Why now? Usopp asked, panicking. Loki, Thor said darkly. He's allied with your world government, or elements within it. They're not taking chances with 2 thunder gods on the loose. The situation looked dire. 10 battleships maintained a blockade around Little Garden, their combined firepower enough to reduce the entire prehistoric island to ash. The Going Merry, docked at the shore, seemed impossibly small and vulnerable by comparison. We'll never break through that, Nami said, calculating angles and wind patterns desperately. Even with Thor's power, there are too many ships, too many angles of fire. Luffy stepped forward, his expression unusually serious as he surveyed the marine armada. Thor, can you get everyone to the Merry? Thor nodded, understanding forming in his eyes. You have a plan? Yeah. Luffy adjusted his straw hat, which began to glow faintly. Something I've been working on but never tried at full power. Might wreck me for a while afterward, but... You intend to channel my full power, Thor realized. Not just what the hat contains, but directly from me. Luffy nodded. Think it'll work? Thor placed both hands on Luffy's shoulders, looking him directly in the eyes. It's dangerous, Luffy. Your body, resilient as it is, isn't designed to channel the full power of a god. But the rubber helps, right? That's what you always said. Yes, but there are limits to everything. Luffy's grin returned, bright and confident. Good thing I'm really bad at recognizing limits. Thor couldn't help but laugh despite the gravity of the situation. Very well. But we do this together, I'll control the flow as much as possible. The crew watched in amazement as Thor and Luffy stood facing each other, the air between them beginning to crackle with energy. What are they doing? Usopp whispered. Something incredibly reckless and probably awesome, Zoro replied with a smirk. Thor raised Mjolnir to the sky, calling down lightning that struck the hammer with blinding intensity. But instead of keeping the power within himself, he directed the continuing stream directly into Luffy's straw hat. The hat's glow intensified from blue to white hot, levitating slightly above Luffy's head as it absorbed more divine energy than it had ever held before. Luffy's body began to glow as well, electricity visibly coursing beneath his rubber skin like luminous veins. I can feel it, Luffy gasped, his voice echoing strangely. So much power. Focus, Luffy, Thor instructed, still channeling the storm. Remember our training. Divine energy responds to will and heart as much as strength. Luffy nodded, centering himself as Thor had taught him years ago. The chaotic lightning flowing around him gradually stabilized, conforming to the shape of his body instead of randomly arcing outward. "Everyone get to the ship," Thor commanded the wide-eyed crew. "Now." Dory and Broggy helped expedite this, each giant scooping up crew members and bounding toward the shore in massive strides. Thor remained with Luffy, continuing to feed him power while monitoring his condition closely. "When you're ready," Thor said, "focus it all into a single attack. Like the hammer striking the anvil." Luffy nodded, his eyes now glowing the same electric blue as Thor's. I think I'm ready." Thor gave him one final surge of power, then stepped back. "Then show them what the pirate god of thunder can do." Luffy turned toward the marine blockade, raising both arms to the sky as Thor had done. The storm clouds that had gathered intensified, spinning into a massive vortex directly above the battleships. Divine Storm, Thunder Emperor. What happened next would be debated in marine intelligence reports for years to come. Witnesses described it as a storm given sentience, or judgment from above. The vortex of clouds descended like a massive fist, striking the center of the marine formation. Lightning erupted not in individual bolts but as a continuous, overwhelming cascade that engulfed 5 ships simultaneously. Water spouts formed around the remaining vessels, lifting them and spinning them like toys before flinging them kilometers away from the island. The display lasted less than 30 seconds, but when it ended, the sea around Little Garden was clear of all marine presence, ships either destroyed or scattered far beyond effective range. On the shore, Luffy fell to his knees, steam rising from his body. The glow faded from his skin and hat as the borrowed divine power dissipated. He was breathing hard but grinning wider than ever. "Did you see that?" he panted as Thor helped him to his feet. "That was amazing." Indeed, Thor agreed, unable to hide his pride despite his concern for Luffy's condition. Few beings in any realm could have channeled that much divine energy without being consumed by it. "Your devil fruit is truly the perfect complement to Asgardian power." The giant stared in awe, then broke into booming laughter. "By the ancestors!" Broggy exclaimed. "I haven't seen such a display since the Age of Heroes." With the path now clear, the Straw Hats said their goodbyes to the giants and boarded the Going Merry. Thor carried the exhausted but jubilant Luffy on board, setting him gently on the deck where Nami immediately began checking him for serious injuries. "He'll recover," Thor assured her. His rubber nature protected his body from the worst effects. "He just needs rest." As they set sail from Little Garden, leaving the prehistoric island behind, Luffy drifted in and out of consciousness. During one of his lucid moments, he grabbed Thor's hand. "Did I do good?" he asked, sounding momentarily like the child Thor had first taken in all those years ago. Thor smiled warmly, ruffling Luffy's hair as he'd done countless times before. "You did wonderfully, my son. Your grandfather would be bursting with pride, as am I." Luffy's answering smile was radiant despite his exhaustion. "When this is all over, when we beat Loki and find the One Piece, will you have to go back to Asgard?" The question caught Thor off guard. He hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead, focused as he was on the immediate threat Loki posed. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "Asgard is my home, my birthright. My father and people will expect my return." Luffy nodded, understanding in his eyes despite the hint of sadness. "It's okay. You've got responsibilities there, just like I've got my crew here." Thor found himself deeply moved by Luffy's maturity. The boy he'd raised had truly become a man worthy of respect. "Whatever happens," Thor promised, "no realm, no barrier, no power in existence will truly separate us again. You are my son in every way that matters, Luffy. Distance cannot change that." Satisfied with this answer, Luffy drifted back to sleep, the Going Merry sailing onward toward Alabasta, and the next confrontation with Loki's growing forces. In Alabasta, Crocodile, warlord of the sea and secret head of Baroque works, received Robin's report with calculating interest. "So the legends are true," he mused, seated in his hidden base beneath the Desert Kingdom's capital. Gods walking among men, ancient weapons connected to other realms. The map showed everything, Robin confirmed. All 4 road poneglyphs, all 3 ancient weapons. More importantly, it confirmed my theory about the Void Century, that outside forces were involved in whatever cataclysm prompted the world government to erase history. Crocodile took a long draw from his cigar. And your new employer? This. Loki? Can he be trusted? About as much as you can, Robin replied coolly. He seeks power, as do you. His methods are different, but his ambition is familiar. Where is he now? He's gone to Water 7, seeking the blueprints for Pluton. From there, he'll head to Fishman Island for Poseidon. Crocodile nodded thoughtfully. And the third weapon? Uranus? For the first time, Robin showed a hint of hesitation. That's where things become complicated. According to the map, Uranus isn't an object or location like the others. It's tied to bloodlines, specifically, to the lineage of the D. Crocodile straightened in his chair. As in Monkey D, Luffy? The boy with the thunder god. Precisely, Robin confirmed. Though Loki seemed to think there was more to it, something about the boy's connection to Thor creating a bridge that wasn't there before. This information clearly disturbed Crocodile. He rose from his desk, pacing the opulent office. The situation has changed. If Straw Hat is connected to Uranus, and he has one of these gods actively helping him, our operation in Alabasta could be compromised, Robin finished for him. Especially with the Straw Hats already en route here. Crocodile's expression hardened into cold resolve. Then we accelerate our plans. The rebellion begins tomorrow. By the time Straw Hat arrives, this kingdom will be mine, and I'll have one more bargaining chip to use with your godly employer. The journey to Alabasta proved more complicated than expected. After leaving Little Garden, the Straw Hats picked up a stowaway, a princess named Vivi who was desperately trying to return to her kingdom and prevent a civil war orchestrated by Crocodile. With Luffy still recovering from his divine power overload, Thor took a more active role in the crew's adventures. When they encountered a sickness that required them to find a doctor on a winter island called Drum Kingdom, it was Thor who carried Nami up the treacherous mountain through avalanches and hostile wildlife. There they met Dar. Kureha and her assistant Chopper, a reindeer who had eaten the human fruit, giving him the ability to transform and speak like a human. Chopper was initially terrified of humans due to past trauma, but strangely, he showed no fear of Thor. "You're not human," the little reindeer said when they first met, sniffing the air curiously. "You smell different. Ancient." Thor smiled kindly. "Perceptive little one. No, I am not human. I am Thor, god of thunder, from the realm of Asgard." Chopper's eyes widened. "A god? Really? That's amazing. Can you show me your power?" "For scientific purposes, of course." Thor obliged with a small demonstration, calling a miniature storm inside Dr. Kureha's castle that danced around the ceiling before dissipating. Chopper was instantly enamored, bombarding Thor with questions about Asgardian physiology and how divinity manifested in biological terms. When Luffy finally recovered enough to meet the reindeer doctor, he immediately declared Chopper would join their crew as their physician. Though initially reluctant, Chopper eventually agreed after witnessing Luffy and the crew defend the Winter Island from the tyrannical King Wapol. A talking reindeer who's a doctor, Thor mused as they set sail from Drum Kingdom with their new crewmate. "Your world continues to surprise me, Luffy. That's what makes it fun." Luffy replied, finally back to his energetic self. "You never know what awesome thing you'll find next." As they approached Alabasta, Thor grew more serious, gathering the crew for strategy. "Loki won't be in Alabasta," he explained. "Based on what we learned at Little Garden, he's pursuing the ancient weapons directly. But his allies, this Baroque Works and their leader Crocodile, remain a threat. And they have Robin, who saw the map to everything Loki wants, Nami added. Exactly. Defeating Crocodile and obtaining that knowledge from Robin becomes our primary objective. Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this planning session, suddenly spoke up. I've been thinking about something. The crew turned to him in surprise. Luffy, thinking, was often a prelude to something either brilliant or completely insane. Loki keeps talking about these ancient weapons like they're just tools he can use. But from what Thor's told me about Asgardian stuff, and what we know about devil fruits and all that, power always comes with a price, right? Thor nodded slowly, impressed with Luffy's insight. Indeed. No power in any realm comes without cost or consequence. So what's the price for using the ancient weapons? Luffy wondered. What happens if someone tries to control all three at once? The question hung in the air, none of them having an answer. But it highlighted a crucial point: they weren't just racing Loki to Raftel, they were trying to prevent potentially catastrophic consequences that even the god of mischief might not fully understand. As Alabasta's shore came into view, the desert kingdom shimmering in the heat, Luffy stood at the figurehead of the Going Merry, Thor beside him. Ready for another adventure, son of Thor? The god asked with a smile. Luffy adjusted his straw hat and grinned. Always. Let's save this kingdom, beat up Crocodile, and get one step closer to kicking your brother's butt. The situation in Alabasta was dire. Civil war had erupted between loyalist forces and rebels who believed King Nefertari Cobra was hoarding water during a devastating drought. In reality, Crocodile had been using his sand powers to steal the rain, creating the crisis as part of his plan to overthrow the kingdom. The Straw Hats split up upon arrival, with Vivi guiding them toward strategic locations. Thor and Luffy headed directly for Rain Dinners, the casino that served as Crocodile's headquarters. Remember, Thor cautioned as they approached the elaborate building, Crocodile possesses the sand fruit. He can transform his body into sand at will, making physical attacks difficult. Luffy nodded, cracking his knuckles. Sand gets hard when it gets wet, right? I bet lightning can turn it to glass. Thor smiled approvingly. Thinking tactically, good. Your rubber nature should also give you some advantage, as his sand cannot absorb the impact of your stretched attacks as easily. They entered the casino boldly, making no attempt at subterfuge. Patrons and staff stared at the odd pair, a teenage boy in a straw hat and a towering, muscular man carrying a massive hammer. Where's Crocodile? Luffy demanded loudly, causing nervous whispers throughout the establishment. Security guards approached cautiously, hands on weapons. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to. They never finished the sentence as Thor casually tapped Mjolnir against the floor, causing the entire building to shudder. Perhaps I wasn't clear, Thor said pleasantly. We're here to see Crocodile. The warlord of the sea. The man manipulating this kingdom toward destruction. Direct us to him, or this structure returns to the sand from which it was built. A smooth voice responded from a balcony above. There's no need for threats. I'm right here. Crocodile stood looking down at them, hook gleaming where his left hand should have been. Beside him was Robin, observing with clinical interest. Straw Hat Luffy, Crocodile acknowledged. Your reputation precedes you. And your companion must be the thunder god I've heard so much about. His eyes narrowed. The brother of my new associate. Crocodile, Luffy growled. You're the one hurting Vivi's country. A simplified view, but essentially correct, Crocodile replied with a smirk. Alabasta is just one piece in a larger game, one that has recently become far more interesting. Thor stepped forward. Whatever Loki has promised you, he won't deliver. Betrayal is as natural to him as breathing. Perhaps, Crocodile shrugged. But his knowledge has already proven invaluable. For instance, I now know exactly what makes your young friend here so special. His gaze fixed on Luffy. The blood of D. The connection to Uranus. The divine power flowing through mortal veins. Luffy's expression showed confusion. Blood of D. What are you talking about? You don't even know. Crocodile laughed. How delicious. The boy with the power to change the world doesn't understand what he is. Thor's grip tightened on Mjolnir. Enough games, Sandman. Whatever you know, speak it plainly or not at all. Very well, Crocodile gestured, and a hidden door opened in the wall beside them. Join me in my private office. We have much to discuss before I kill you both. It was obviously a trap, but also their best chance to learn what Crocodile knew. Thor and Luffy exchanged glances, then followed the warlord through the door, which closed behind them with an ominous click. The office turned out to be an elaborate cage, constructed of sea prism stone that weakened devil fruit users. Luffy immediately felt his strength ebbing, though Thor remained unaffected. Did you really think this would hold us? Thor asked, raising Mjolnir. The cage isn't for both of you, Crocodile explained from safely outside the bars. It's to separate you. Robin, if you would. Robin crossed her arms in her characteristic pose. Vingt fleur. 20 arms sprouted from the ground and walls around Thor, grabbing him at strategic points. Before he could react, the floor beneath him opened, dropping him into darkness while the trapdoor snapped shut above. Thor! Luffy shouted, rushing to the spot despite his weakened state. Don't worry, Crocodile said casually. He's merely taking an express route to the underground chamber, a special place filling with water as we speak. If he's truly a god, drowning shouldn't be a problem, though the sea kings we keep there might provide some challenge. Luffy gripped the bars, glaring at Crocodile with undisguised hatred. If you hurt him, you'll what? Look at yourself, Straw Hat. The sea prism stone drains your devil fruit power, and without the thunder god to charge you up, you're just a scrawny kid with delusions of grandeur. Despite his weakened state, Luffy's eyes burned with determination. I don't need powers to kick your ass. Thor taught me to fight long before I ate the gum-gum fruit. Crocodile seemed amused by this defiance. Spirited. I can see why Loki is concerned about you. He pulled up a chair, sitting casually before the cage. Let me tell you a story while we wait for your friends to arrive. They've been led into similar traps throughout the city. I don't care about your stupid stories. Oh, but you should, Crocodile countered. It's about your family, after all. About what the D in Monkey D. Luffy really means. Despite himself, Luffy hesitated. He knew almost nothing about his family beyond Garp, his parents had never been mentioned, his lineage a mystery. Seeing he had Luffy's attention, Crocodile continued. 800 years ago, during what your scholars now call the Void Century, beings from another realm visited this world. Some called them gods, others demons or aliens, the name didn't matter. What mattered was what they left behind. The ancient weapons, Luffy said, remembering Thor's explanation. Precisely. But they left something else too, bloodlines. Certain families were changed by contact with these visitors. Enhanced. The world government later hunted these bloodlines to near extinction, but some survived, carrying a mark in their name, the letter D. Luffy's eyes widened. Are you saying I'm part Asgardian? Like Thor? Crocodile chuckled. Not Asgardian specifically. The visitors came from many realms. But you carry the potential of those ancient lineages, a potential that has been dramatically amplified by your decade under Thor's tutelage and the power he's shared with you. What does that have to do with Uranus? Everything, Crocodile leaned forward intently. Pluton is a battleship, Poseidon a mermaid princess, but Uranus was never a thing or a person. It was an ability, carried in the blood of the D-clan. The power to open pathways between worlds. The implications hit Luffy like a physical blow. That's why Loki wants me. Wants you dead, Crocodile corrected. Or under his control. With your potential awakened by Thor's power, you've become a key that could either lock Loki out of this world permanently, or give him unrestricted access to it. The conversation was interrupted by water beginning to seep into the room, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. "Ah, it seems our time is up," Crocodile rose from his chair. "The underwater chamber is designed to flood completely when breached. Your thunder god must have made quite an impact." Thor. Luffy renewed his struggles against the cage bars, but the sea prism stone continued to sap his strength. "Don't worry, Straw Hat. I won't kill you, that honor belongs to Loki himself." He was quite specific about it. Crocodile turned to leave. "You'll remain here until he arrives. Consider it time to reflect on your unexpected importance in the grand scheme of things." As Crocodile and Robin departed, the water continued rising around Luffy's cage. Despite the sea prism stone weakening him, Luffy refused to give up, searching for any weakness in his prison. "Thor will be fine," he told himself firmly. "He survived worse than a flooded room and some sea kings. And I'm gonna get out of here and help him kick Crocodile's sandy butt." Deep beneath rain dinners, Thor found himself in a massive chamber rapidly filling with water. The fall hadn't harmed him, Asgardian durability saw to that, but the situation was precarious nonetheless. Massive shapes moved beneath the dark water, circling like predators. "Sea kings," Thor muttered, recognizing the creatures from stories Luffy had told him. Enormous sea monsters that ruled the deepest parts of this world's oceans. As the first massive serpentine head broke the surface, jaws wide to swallow him whole, Thor spun Mjolnir rapidly. "I have faced the world's serpent itself," he declared. "You are but minnows in comparison." The battle that followed was brief but spectacular. Thor's lightning transformed the flooding chamber into a storm-tossed nightmare for the Sea Kings, who found their natural environment turned against them. Each thunderbolt that struck the water conducted throughout the chamber, stunning the massive creatures. When the last Sea King retreated to deeper waters, Thor turned his attention to escaping and reaching Luffy. The chamber had multiple outlets, but identifying which led back to Crocodile's casino proved challenging. When in doubt, Thor decided, raising Mjolnir, create your own path. With a mighty swing, he brought the hammer down against the chamber ceiling, causing the entire structure to shudder. Repeated impacts opened a jagged hole through which Thor could see upper levels of the building. With Mjolnir propelling him, he ascended through the improvised shaft, determined to reach Luffy before Crocodile's plans advanced further. Meanwhile, the rest of the Straw Hat crew had their own problems. Separated throughout Alabastus capital, each faced Baroque Works officers in increasingly difficult battles. Zoro confronted the Blade Master Mr. 1, Sanji faced the explosive Mr. 5, Chopper battled Miss Merry Christmas, and Usopp and Nami teamed up against Mr. 4 and Miss Valentine. The city itself had become a battleground as rebel and royal forces clashed in the streets, manipulated by Crocodile's machinations. Princess Vivi raced desperately to reach the palace and stop the bloodshed before it was too late. Back in the flooding room beneath rain dinners, Luffy continued struggling against his sea prism stone cage. The water had risen to his chest, and his devil fruit weakness made each passing minute more dangerous. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, the wall beside his cage exploded inward. Through the dust and debris stepped Luffy's first mate, Roronoa Zoro, bloodied but victorious from his own battle. "There you are," Zoro said calmly, as if finding his captain in a flooding dungeon was a routine occurrence. "Let's get you out of that thing." With precise sword strikes, Zoro cut through the sea prism stone bars, a feat that demonstrated just how much his skills had grown during their journey. Freed from the cage, Luffy immediately felt his strength returning as they moved away from the sea prism stone fragments. "Thanks, Zoro. We need to find Thor." Crocodile dropped him into some underwater chamber with Sea Kings. "Thor can handle himself," Zoro replied pragmatically. "Our priority should be Crocodile. The others are dealing with his officers throughout the city, but the Sandman himself is heading for the royal palace." "Then that's where we're going to," Luffy decided. "If we take down Crocodile, this whole thing ends." As they navigated the flooding casino, searching for an exit, Luffy filled Zoro in on what Crocodile had revealed, about the D bloodline, about Uranus, about his apparent connection to the ancient weapons. "So you're telling me you're part god already?" Zoro summarized, raising an eyebrow. "That, actually explains a lot." "I don't know if it's true," Luffy admitted. Crocodile could have been lying. "Maybe," Zoro acknowledged. "But Thor didn't seem surprised when he showed up and found you could channel his power, did he? Almost like he expected it." This gave Luffy pause. Had Thor known something about his lineage all along? Had that influenced his decision to raise Luffy after Garp's death? They reached the casino's main floor to find it abandoned, guests and staff having fled the flooding building. Outside, the city was in chaos, smoke rising from multiple locations as the civil war raged. "The palace is that way," Zoro pointed, then immediately started walking in the opposite direction. "Other way," Luffy corrected, grabbing his directionally challenged first mate and steering him toward the massive royal structure visible on the city's highest point. As they raced through the war-torn streets, the sky above them began to darken unnaturally. Storm clouds gathered with impossible speed, centering directly over the royal palace. "Thor," Luffy said with a grin of relief. "He made it out." "And he's pissed," Zoro added, noting the intensity of the forming storm. "Let's hurry before he has all the fun without us." At the royal palace, Crocodile had cornered King Cobra, demanding the location of Pluton, which he believed was hidden somewhere in Alabasta. The ancient battleship had been one of the keys to Loki's plan, and securing it would give Crocodile significant leverage in their partnership. For the last time, Cobra insisted despite the hook pressed against his throat, "I know nothing of this weapon you seek. The royal family protects the Poneglyph, yes, but it contains history, not weapons." "You're lying," Crocodile snarled. "The Nefertari family was one of the 20 founders of the world government. You know exactly what secrets they buried." Their standoff was interrupted by a thunderous crash as the palace ceiling collapsed inward. Through the opening descended Thor, Mjolnir crackling with barely contained fury. Crocodile, the god of thunder, roared. "Face me, villain." The warlord stepped back from King Cobra, turning to face this new threat with a calculating expression. "The thunder god escapes. I'm not surprised, merely disappointed in my sea kings." "Where is Luffy?" Thor demanded, advancing on Crocodile. "Safe, for now," Crocodile replied smoothly. "Until Loki arrives to claim what's his." Thor's eyes narrowed. "Explain yourself." "Your little protege is more valuable than you realize," Crocodile said. "The blood of D, combined with the divine power you've shared with him, he's become Uranus incarnate. The key to opening or closing the pathways between realms." "You lie," Thor growled, though uncertainty flashed in his eyes. "I would have sensed such power in him." "Would you? When it lay dormant until you began feeding him your divine energy?" Crocodile's smile was cold. "Why do you think Loki has focused so intently on the boy? It's not just petty revenge against you. It's because Straw Hat has become the linchpin in his entire plan." Before Thor could respond, another section of the palace wall exploded inward. Through the dust stepped Luffy and Zoro, both battle-worn but determined. "Crocodile!" Luffy shouted, echoing Thor's earlier entrance. "I'm here to kick your ass and stop this war." Thor's face lit up with relief at seeing Luffy safe. "You escaped." Zoro helped, Luffy grinned, then turned serious as he focused on Crocodile. "Is it true? What you said about me and the D in Uranus?" Crocodile's expression revealed genuine surprise. "You escaped the sea prism cage. Impressive, Straw Hat. Perhaps Loki's concerns about you are justified after all." "Answer me," Luffy demanded. "Yes, it's true," Robin spoke up, stepping from the shadows where she'd been observing. "The Poneglyphs confirm it. The Void Century, the Ancient Kingdom, the 3 weapons, all connected to visitors from other realms." And the D clan were there, collaborators. Descendants? The exact relationship isn't clear, but the potential lies in your blood. Thor moved to Luffy's side, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. If this is true, it changes nothing about who you are, Luffy. You remain my son, the boy I raised, the man I'm proud of. Luffy nodded, drawing strength from Thor's words. I don't care about ancient blood or whatever. I'm still going to be king of the pirates, and that means taking down anyone who hurts my friends or their countries. With that declaration, he launched himself at Crocodile, initiating a battle that would determine Alabastus' fate. The clash between Luffy and Crocodile shook the palace foundations. True to their earlier strategy discussion, Luffy quickly discovered that his lightning-infused attacks could indeed turn Crocodile sand to glass, preventing the warlord from simply dispersing around physical blows. While Luffy engaged Crocodile, Thor turned his attention to Robin. You've seen the map to Raftel, to the weapons. Tell me, scholar, what is Loki's true endgame? Robin studied him thoughtfully. Your brother believes the ancient weapons can be combined to create a permanent Bifrost, a rainbow bridge like the one connecting Asgard to other realms. But in doing so, he would tear the fabric between worlds so completely that barriers would dissolve entirely. Catastrophic, Thor murmured, understanding the implications. Realms exist separately for good reason. Their energies, their fundamental laws, some are incompatible. Precisely, Robin nodded. The world government buried this knowledge after the Void Century because the last attempt to bridge realms permanently caused devastation on a global scale. That's the true history they've hidden, not just their own rise to power, but the cataclysm that made it possible. Their conversation was cut short as Crocodile sent Luffy crashing through a nearby column. The young pirate bounced back immediately, body already crackling with gathered electricity. Gum Gum Thunder Rifle. Luffy's stretched arm twisted as it extended, delivering a corkscrewing punch that caught Crocodile mid-sand transformation. The concentrated lightning turned the sand to glass at the point of impact, allowing the physical blow to connect solidly. Crocodile staggered backward, glass cracking from his partially solidified shoulder. Impossible. No one has ever managed to strike my true form. I'm not just anyone, Luffy replied, pressing his advantage. I'm the man who's going to be king of the pirates. Gum Gum Thunder Gatling. A barrage of lightning-fast, electricity-charged punches rained down on Crocodile, each impact creating patches of glass that prevented the warlord from fully dispersing. It was like fighting quicksand that kept partially solidifying. Crocodile couldn't maintain his defense under the sustained assault. The battle reached its climax when Luffy, drawing on the techniques Thor had taught him, gathered atmospheric electricity into his right arm. The limb glowed with blue-white energy as he stretched it high above the palace. Gum. The arm began its descent, picking up speed and power. Thor's hammer. The impact struck Crocodile with such force that it drove him through the palace floor and into the bedrock beneath, creating a perfectly circular shaft of glass-lined sand. The warlord lay at the bottom, unconscious and defeated, his sand powers neutralized by the heat and electricity of Luffy's final attack. As the dust settled, Thor approached Luffy, pride evident in his expression. Well done, my son. You've grown stronger than I could have imagined. Luffy grinned despite his exhaustion. Couldn't have done it without your training. That last move was inspired by watching you fight. Their victory celebration was short-lived. Outside the palace, the civil war still raged through Alabastus streets. King Cobra, freed from Crocodile's captivity, looked out at his burning kingdom in despair. We must stop the fighting before more lives are lost, he said urgently. But how? The rebel army believes I've betrayed them, and they won't listen to reason now. Vivi, who had arrived during the final moments of Luffy's battle with Crocodile, stepped forward with determination. I can stop them. I just need to be heard above the chaos. I can help with that, Thor offered. Raising Mjolnir, he called down a thunderclap so powerful it momentarily silenced the entire city. In that brief window of quiet, he created a platform of swirling cloud that lifted Vivi high above the capital where all could see her. Her impassioned plea for peace, visible to all combatants and amplified by Thor's thunder, finally broke through the lies that had driven the kingdom to war. As the truth about Crocodile's manipulation spread, weapons were lowered and the fighting gradually ceased. With Crocodile defeated and the civil war averted, only one loose end remained: Robin. The archaeologist had vanished during the final battle, taking with her the knowledge of the road poneglyphs and ancient weapons. She's going after Loki, Thor surmised. But whether as his ally or with her own agenda, I cannot say. We'll find her, Luffy said confidently. And then we'll find Loki, and the One Piece, and fix everything. Thor smiled at Luffy's unshakable optimism, though concern lingered in his eyes. If what they had learned about Luffy's connection to Uranus was true, the danger was far greater than the young pirate realized. Loki wouldn't simply want to defeat Luffy now, he would want to use him, to harness the dormant power in his blood. But those were concerns for tomorrow. Today, they had saved the kingdom and defeated a warlord of the sea. Tonight, they would rest and recover, for the path ahead would only grow more challenging. Days later, as the Straw Hat Pirates prepared to depart a healing Alabasta, Thor took Luffy aside for a private conversation on the shore. I cannot continue with you directly, he said, placing both hands on Luffy's shoulders. Loki knows I'm here now, and he'll be watching for us to travel together. I must pursue him my own way, try to catch him before he secures more of the ancient weapons. Disappointment flashed across Luffy's face. But we just got back together. I know, my son, Thor said gently. But this isn't goodbye, not truly. I will be watching over you, and when the time is right, when you reach Raftel, I will be there. You promise? On my honor as God of Thunder and your father in all but blood, Thor vowed. Besides, he added with a smile, tapping Luffy's straw hat, part of me remains with you always. If you truly need me, call the storm, and I will hear you. Luffy nodded, understanding the necessity even if he didn't like it. We'll keep going toward Raftel. We'll find the road poneglyphs and the One Piece. And I'll ensure Loki doesn't reach it first, Thor promised. When next we meet, it will be to end his threat once and for all. Their farewell was interrupted by Nami calling from the Going Merry. Luffy. Marine ships approaching. We need to leave now. With one final embrace, Thor stepped back. Go, Captain Straw Hat. Continue your journey. Become the king you are destined to be. Luffy adjusted his hat, determination replacing sadness. I will. And when we meet again, I'll have gotten even stronger. I don't doubt it for a moment, Thor replied with a proud smile. As the Going Merry set sail with Luffy and his crew, Thor remained on the shore, watching until they disappeared over the horizon. Then, raising Mjolnir to the sky, he called down a bolt of lightning that enveloped him completely. When the light faded, the God of Thunder was gone, off to hunt his brother and prevent catastrophe. Aboard the Going Merry, Luffy stood at the figurehead, looking ahead rather than behind. His hat glowed faintly in the sunlight, a reminder of the bond that transcended realms. Captain. Zoro approached, standing beside him. You okay? Luffy nodded, his usual grin returning. Yeah. We've got a job to do. Find the One Piece, become king of the pirates, kick Loki's butt, save the world, you know, the usual. Zoro smirked. Just another day for the pirate God of Thunder. As if in response, a single bolt of lightning flashed across the clear sky ahead of them, a farewell, a blessing, and a promise all in one. Next stop, Water 7. Luffy declared, pointing forward. We've got a shipwright to recruit, a god to find, and adventures waiting. Let's go. And so the Straw Hat Pirates sailed on, their captain carrying not just the dream of becoming Pirate King, but the legacy of two worlds and the power to either bridge or separate them forever. Whether Luffy's destiny was tied to ancient bloodlines or simply the result of one god's love for an orphan boy ultimately didn't matter. What mattered was the choice that awaited him at journey's end, a choice that would determine the fate of realms beyond imagination and earn him a title far greater than any king. The pirate god of thunder sailed forward, toward adventure, toward family, toward destiny, just as Thor had taught him. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.